Government failure, stock market crash, and dictatorial alliances are not popular. People are starting to realize that there is no truth here beyond the desire for personal wealth and power. And then James Carville told Dan Abrams that he says, I believe that this administration in less than 30 days, this should be fewer than, in less than 30 days is in the midst of a massive collapse, and particularly a collapse in public opinion. And as Congressman Ro Khanna said earlier in the program, quoting Abraham Lincoln, public opinion is everything. At the same time, 4 Republicans have now thrown Nazi salutes, 3 over the past weekend at CPAC. You know, they think they can overcome their fear of the people by intimidating us. These fascists are getting panicky, and panicky would-be tyrants are dangerous. Now, that said, Thursday is the 92nd anniversary of the February 27, 1933 burning of the German Parliament building, the Reichstaggebäude. And, you know, this was in the middle of an economic crisis, the Great Depression, and it was done by, presumably, allegedly, Dutch communist Marius van der Lubbe, a young man who was alleged to be mentally ill, actually. He tried to attack a couple of other buildings, you know, putting basically Molotov cocktails on the outside of them. Unsuccessfully, it didn't catch on fire. And then somebody let him inside the German Parliament building, which had these long halls with old tapestries hanging down the walls, which are very flammable. And he set that thing on fire, and the whole building went up. And when that happened, you know, Hitler knew this was coming. His intelligence services had told him about van der Lubbe. And he had just been chancellor at that point in time for about a month, and you know, well, actually about 2 months. On the 27th of February, it would have been 2 months. And so he rushed over to the Parliament building and got in front of the media. He was live on the radio all over Germany. He said, "You are now witnessing the beginning of a great epoch in history. This fire is the beginning. It's a sign from God." And he declared an all-out war on terrorism, and said that the terrorists who had done the fire were the socialists in the government and the Jews. 2 weeks later, he opened the first detention center in Oranienburg for terrorists. And of course, the people who went there, who were put there, were mostly the communists and the socialists in the parliament, who he, you know, blamed for the burning of the Parliament building. And he said he was doing this in the name of stopping terrorism. Now, Putin did the same thing in 2002 with the Chechens. There was this big, this Moscow theater was seized by Chechen separatists, and Putin had a gas with something like fentanyl in it, some sort of very toxic gas pumped into the theater, killed a bunch of people, but he ended the siege. And that was the thing that gave him the public opinion necessary to just flatten Chechnya and reabsorb it into Russia. It had been part of the Soviet Union. It had been an independent country before that, much like Ukraine. And to clamp down on protest in Russia. You know, starting in 2003. I mean, this is when he went after Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was the CEO of Lukoil, one of the oligarchs who had supported Putin. But in 2003, he arrested him, and that was kind of the beginning of the massive, you know, repression against the Russian people. So, you know, there's this long history of leaders using attacks on their countries to not just enhance their popularity, but also to pass laws that reduce freedom, essentially. George W. Bush did this after 9/11 with the Patriot Act. Benjamin Netanyahu did it after October 7th in Israel. So the question in my mind is, will there be an attack against the United States? Elon Musk is now the focus of much of the rage of the country. And he points to the protests happening at Tesla car dealership showrooms around the country. Were you telling me, Sean? Sean was driving by one over the weekend, and there was a whole bunch here in Portland, a Tesla dealership, a bunch of people out in front protesting. A 39-year-old social worker, Matt DiCarlo, told Bunch that he was sickened by Musk throwing up the Nazi salute earlier this year. And Will Bunch writes, consider these pickets the first green shoots of an early spring uprising across America after a winter of discontented hibernation by many of the 78 million who had voted against Trump and his anti-democratic visions. He notes that there have been large protests over the last week by laid-off federal workers, by LGBTQ plus activists in New York City, furious over the scrubbing of transgender references from the Stonewall National Monument, when in fact it was the arrest of a trans person who really started Stonewall. And in Philadelphia, he writes, for the Not My President's Day. So I think it's beginning. Meanwhile, Donald Trump shut down, or is in the process of shutting down, our U.S. military base in Greece, in the city of Alexandropoli. And this has been a key logistical hub for U.S. and NATO operations in southeastern Europe. And by dismantling this, apparently at the request of Vladimir Putin, according to this report over at defense-blog.com, press reports highlight the closure is seen as a strategic loss for Greece, particularly in supporting NATO's presence in Eastern Europe. And according to Greek media, Trump's decision to dismantle a military presence in Alexandropoli came after a joint request from Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Now, of course, Turkey and Greece have been, had a low-level conflict for a long, long time. So here's Donald Trump now starting to take apart NATO. And I have not seen any stories about this on the media, monitoring CNN here in the studio. Right now, Trump is meeting with Macron. But he's not going to listen to Macron, I don't think. I mean, Macron came over here thinking he could talk some sense into Donald. Ain't going to happen. Donald Trump is either terrified of Putin or indebted to Putin or in love with Putin or wants to be Putin, or all of the above.
We say fight back!
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club, and today we're reading from Arundhati Roy's brilliant book, Capitalism, A Ghost Story. This is from the afterword at the very end of the book. Yesterday morning, the police cleared Zuccotti Park, but today the people are back. The police should know that this protest is not a battle for territory. We're not fighting for the right to occupy a park here or there. We're fighting for justice. Justice is not just for the people of the United States, but for everybody. What you've achieved since September 17th, when the Occupy movement began in the United States, is to introduce a new imagination, a new political language into the heart of the empire. You've reintroduced the right to dream into a system that tried to turn everybody into zombies, mesmerized into equating mindless consumerism with happiness and fulfillment. As a writer, let me tell you, this is an immense achievement. I cannot thank you enough. We are talking about justice. Today, as we speak, the Army of the United States is waging a war of occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan. U.S. drones are killing civilians in Pakistan and beyond. Tens of thousands of U.S. troops and death squads are moving into Africa. If spending trillions of dollars of your money to administer occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan is not enough, A war against Iran is being talked up. Ever since the Great Depression, the manufacture of weapons and the export of war have been key ways in which the United States has stimulated its economy. Just recently, under President Obama, the United States made a $60 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. It hopes to sell thousands of bunker busters to the United Arab Emirates. It has sold $5 billion worth of military aircraft to my country, India, my country, which has more poor people than all the poorest countries of Africa put together. All these wars, from the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to Vietnam, Korea, Latin America, have claimed millions of lives. All of them fought to secure the, quote, American way of life, end quote. Today we know that the American way of life, the model that the rest of the world is meant to aspire toward, has resulted in 400 people owning the wealth of half the population of the United States. It has meant thousands of people being turned out of their homes and jobs while the U.S. government bailed out banks and corporations. American International Group alone was given $182 billion in the bailout. The Indian government worships U.S. economic policy. As a result of 20 years of the free market economy, today 100 of India's richest people own assets equal to 1/4 of the country's GDP, while more than 80% of Indian people live on less than 50 cents a day. 250,000 farmers driven into a committed suicide. We call this progress and now think of ourselves as a superpower. Like you, we are well qualified, we have nuclear bombs and obscene inequality. The good news is that people have had enough and are just not going to take it anymore. The Occupy movement has joined thousands of other resistance movements all over the world in which the poorest of people are standing up and stopping the richest corporations in their tracks. Dreamed that we would see it, the people of the United States on our side, trying to do this in the heart of empire. I don't know how to communicate the enormity of what this means. The 1% say we don't have demands. They don't know, perhaps, that our anger alone would be enough to destroy them. But there are some things, a few pre-revolutionary thoughts I had for us to think about together. We want to put a lid on this system that manufactures inequality. We want to put a cap on the unfettered accumulation of wealth and property by individuals as well as corporations. As capitalists and Liddites, we demand, 1, an end to cross-ownership in business. For example, weapons manufacturers cannot own TV stations. Mining corporations cannot run newspapers. Business houses cannot fund universities. Drug companies cannot control public health funds. 2, natural resources and essential infrastructure, water supply, electricity, health, and education cannot be privatized. 3, everybody must have a right to shelter, education, and health care. 4, the children of the rich cannot inherit their parents' wealth. This struggle has reawakened our imagination. Somewhere along the line, capitalism reduced the idea of justice to mean just human rights. The idea and the idea of duty became blasphemous. We're not fighting to tinker with reforming a system that needs to be replaced. As a capist and a Lidite, I salute your struggle. Salam and Zimbad Dad. That's the end of the book. This is from the very opening of it, chapter 1. Is it a house or a home? A temple to the new India or a warehouse for its ghosts? Ever since Antilla arrived in Altamont Road in Mumbai, exuding mystery and a quiet menace, things have not been the same. Here we are, the friend who took me there said. Pay your respects to our new ruler. Antilla belongs to India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani. I'd read about this most expensive dwelling ever built, the 27 floors, 3 helipads, 9 lifts, hanging gardens, ballrooms, weather rooms, gymnasiums, 6 floors of parking, and 600 servants. Nothing had prepared me for the vertical lawn, a soaring 27-story high wall of grass attached to a vast metal grid. The grass was dry in patches, bits have fallen off in neat rectangles, clearly trickle down hadn't worked. But gush up certainly has. That's why in a nation of 1.2 billion, India's 100 richest people own assets equivalent to 1/4 of the GDP. And then Arundhati Roy goes on from there talking about how India is kind of an example of capitalism run amok. Capitalism, a Ghost Story by Arundhati Roy.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy, what is it, Wednesday? Holy cow, the week is sliding right by. Senator Bernie Sanders will be with us in just a moment. He's out on his anti-oligarchy tour. Oh, is he here? Aha! Senator Sanders is here. I'll fill you in on the rest of the program when we're done talking with Senator Sanders, because I do not want to keep him waiting. The man of the hour, the guy who's out there taking names and kicking ass, traveling across the Midwest, talking to people about oligarchy. Senator Sanders, welcome back to the program. It is always so nice to have you with us. Tell us about your tour.
Good to be with you again, Tom.
Thank you. Tell us about your anti-oligarchy tour.
Well, I think that all across this country, in blue states, red states, purple states, people are outraged at what they're seeing in the Trump administration. You know, I was at the inaugural event, kind of had a box seat, and what was fairly remarkable is right behind the president getting sworn into office are the three wealthiest people in America, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg. And then right behind them are 13 other billionaires who were nominated by Trump to take over major agencies. So if we have ever seen a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, for the billionaire class, we are seeing it right now. And people understand that at a time when the very richest people are becoming phenomenally richer, while working families all over this country are struggling, what we're seeing now is absurd. It's unacceptable. We have got to fight back. And that's what the oligarchy tour is about.
Tell me about the reception you're receiving.
Well, it was really good. We are initially and primarily focusing on those congressional districts where Republican members of Congress won by slim majorities. And that was the case in Omaha, Nebraska. It was the case in Iowa City. We will soon be hitting the road into Michigan, into Wisconsin, probably Nevada, probably California, New York State. We'll be getting around the country and making it clear to constituents in those districts that there will be, in the relatively short period of time, a major, what is called a reconciliation bill. It's a big bill. It's Trump's beautiful big bill. And what that bill will do is provide over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and make massive destructive cuts to Medicaid, education, housing, veterans' needs, and what working families desperately require. And when we talk about the proposed cuts to Medicaid, there may be some people who are listening will say, well, you know, that's too bad, but I'm not on Medicaid. Understand that if Trump gets away with what he wants, it will mean massive cuts to the Community Health Center program, which provides primary health care to 32 million Americans, something I have fought for very hard over the years, but 40% of Medicaid. They will not be able to provide the primary care that people need. 2 out of 3 people who are in nursing homes. You got a mom or a dad in a nursing home? Well, guess what? 2 out of 3 people in nursing homes get supported by Medicaid. Medicaid obviously plays an important role with hospitals all over this country. If they don't get the money they need, your rates are going to go up when you end up in the hospital. So at a time when we have a broken and dysfunctional healthcare system and are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people, what Trump is proposing will make absolutely destructive, have a destructive impact on health care for every American. And all of that is to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%.
Yeah, it's truly mind-boggling when you consider the breadth and depth of it. Congressman, I've always thought of you as a singularly brilliant political person, analyst, politician, et cetera, but you're not alone.
I would not go that far, Tom, but I thank you for the compliment.
Yeah, but let me qualify that. You're not the only guy, who's caucusing with the Democrats. There are, there's a lot of Democratic politicians who know how to give a damn good speech. Why aren't more of your colleagues doing what you're doing?
Well, I think, in fairness, you'll have to ask my colleagues. But I think, in my own view, and Tom, you have heard me say this, you and I used to do a regular show every Friday, and you've probably heard me, and listeners have heard me say this. Trumpism is, I think, not so much that ordinary working people want to see tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to Medicaid and education. It's not that ordinary people want to throw 20 million undocumented people out of this country and break up families and destroy the economy in the process. It's not just ordinary people, are racist, the sexist, the homophobes. It is largely a failure of the Democratic Party over the years to recognize the reality that the status quo is not working for ordinary people. Today, as you and I chat, Tom, 60% of the American people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck, so I know what that's about. And the stress that is on ordinary people from California to Vermont is just extraordinary. People right now, they're worried about how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to, if they get to work, how they're going to afford childcare. Their mom is sick, how are they going to buy prescription drugs that their mom may need? How do you raise a family when the price of food is soaring and get decent quality food? So you got all of these, and you well know, I know you talk about it all the time, but unbelievably, in the last 50 years, 50 years, if you look at in real inflation accounted wages for the average American worker has not gone up. It has been stagnant. You have a huge increase in worker productivity and technology, and all of those benefits go to the 1%. That is the reality. You tell me, Tom, you're a political observer. How many Democrats talk about that reality?
Yeah, a very small handful, unfortunately. I mean, we have Ro Khanna, Mark Pocan, Pramila Jayapal. They come on the program regularly doing what you used to do, taking calls for an hour. But it's pulling teeth trying to get a lot of these Democrats either to come on the program or even speak out like that.
That's right. So if you're the average person out there, and there are people listening to the show right now, they're making 14, 15, 16 bucks an hour, maybe less. Do they think that the Democrats are responding to their needs? We haven't raised the minimum wage, which is now at the federal level, $7.25 an hour. Only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. Only major country not to guarantee paid family and medical leave. So what people are saying is, look, Democrats haven't done anything. Trump is talking about changing the system. Well, the system does need change. I'm going to vote for Trump. Unfortunately, the changes that he is bringing about in virtually every way will make a terrible situation even worse. And it's not just catering to the needs of the billionaire class. I guess today he announced the, what was it called, gold card. So if you're a billionaire, you can buy American citizenship.
Yeah.
$25,000. But if you're a working person, what you're going to get in this country is cuts to Medicaid and education. But it's not only even the economics of what's going on. What is very frightening, and I'm sure you have been discussing it, is the movement toward authoritarianism, which is tied into oligarchy. You have a president now who, for the first time, I think, at least in modern history, is usurping the powers of the Congress, challenging the powers of the courts. The older I get, the more appreciative I am of these guys in the 1770s who were nobody's fools, who had the courage to take on the King of England, fight for self-determination here in America, in the colonies, and understood that you have to disperse power. And that's why you have a legislative branch, the Congress, you have a judiciary, that's the federal courts, and you have an executive branch, the president. They did not want another king. They fought against the king. And now you have this guy challenging the courts. You have J.D. Vance saying, well, I don't know that the courts have the ability to stop or should have the ability to stop a president. Really? It's about 150 years of American jurisprudence. You're having the president deny the funding that Congress has passed, totally unconstitutional. So you got all of that. Then you got the billionaire class owning the media, and you're seeing that play out. Musk putting out all kinds of lies and distortions on his in Twitter. Just today, you may have noticed, Tom, Jeff Bezos, and I think Jeff has a bit of envy here. He's only the second wealthiest guy in the world. He's only worth a mere $250 billion. He has told his editorial page to become a right-wing page. He owns Twitch as well. And you're seeing the billionaire class that owns the media falling in line behind Trump. You're seeing this country move to kleptocracy. President of the United States taking office a little while ago, when he was about to take office, issues a coin, makes billions. His wife makes billions, whatever it is, who knows? And then, in terms of foreign policy, I mean, again, what we're seeing is almost hard to imagine, and such an insult to the men and women in our country who fought and died to defend democracy. I'm thinking about, I always get touched deeply. You've seen that, what's it called? Private Ryan, what was it?
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan. Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan, and that opening scene, that horrible scene on D-Day, when, the invasion of Europe began. And guys, so many of these people died, were maimed, taking on Nazism and in the Far East, taking on, Japanese imperialism, fighting for democracy. And after the war, the United States did the right thing. Our foreign policy hasn't always been great, but the Marshall Plan said, you know what? We're going to do our best to make Japan and Germany democracies, and today they are. They have their problems. Every country on earth has their problems. Fought and died to create democracy around the world, to spread democracy. And now, the other day, you have the United States, to our everlasting shame, something we'll never live down. Resolution comes to the floor of the General Assembly of the UN, making it clear that Putin started the war in Ukraine, and the United States couldn't vote for that resolution. That's
amazing. Senator, my apologies for calling you Congressman earlier, but there's that hard break that you're familiar with from all those years. Thank you so much for dropping by today. It is always inspiring to talk with you. We really appreciate it.
Well, keep up the great work, Tom. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov, for information on his anti-oligarchy tour. You can also send Sanders on Twitter or at Bernie Sanders on Blue Sky. And welcome back, Val in Fresno, California. Hey, Val, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, good morning. Hope you can hear me okay. I got you on the speaker.
Just fine, Val.
And
speaker's fine as long as you keep the microphone right next to your mouth. I'll never know the difference.
Sure am. And I wanted to spout some things off. Oh, boy. Oh, never mind. A call's coming in, but I got to ignore it. Okay, Tom, can you hear me?
Yes.
Or no? Oh, okay, good. All right, just about Kamala Harris. I think she could be maybe that's her duty to be the leader. Yesterday you were saying Hakeem Jeffries is probably not the best person
well, where
to really
is she?
be speaking out.
As far as I can tell, she's hiding someplace or on vacation. I don't get it. She's made one speech since she surrendered her campaign. She warned us that these guys were fascists, and now she's like, what, going to sleep?
It would be the perfect time for her to kind of, lift us up and give us some hope.
I agree. The Democratic Party is just screaming for leadership.
Yeah, it would send a strong message, I think. But is that unprecedented in our history? Usually the loser just goes away in obscurity, right? Typically when they lose elections, but it's time to change that guard.
Yeah,
I think it's time for her or Tim Walz.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that that's the precedent. I mean, Donald Trump certainly broke that precedent after he lost in 2020.
Right. Yeah, he never shut up on Twitter. Like, come on, Kamala. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
I'm with you, and I'd like to hear from Joe Biden too. Although he's, he kind of mumbles through things, but Kamala Harris in particular, she should be out there speaking. Val, thank you. Great point. Omar in Herndon, Virginia. Hey, Omar, what's up?
Tom, just real quick before I get to my main point, there's a report in Le Monde, the French magazine, that Trump basically and Putin are trying to agree to divide Ukraine. So you're going to basically have two Ukraines. That's what they really their main goal.
Yep.
Because they don't think that they can basically bring it back to the old Ukraine. And European, we're not going to have Ukraine all sacrificed. But to the point, and I talked about this yesterday, leadership, the new leadership, is Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. That's who we need. Those are the people who've been out there fighting and speaking. And I'm going to be honest with you, I am a little bit bothered and disturbed, the silenceness. Our leadership is not fighting back. We should start the 50-state strategy, get on the bus and go to every capital city and tie Musk and Trump with the Republican. And hopefully within 2 years, we wipe them in the Senate and the House. But I'm not seeing the wheels are going right now. And I'm telling you, man, you know me, I bleed blue. But it's time for a new progressive party.
I agree.
I know you don't.
Not a new progressive party, but a new to reinvent the Democratic Party. I'm with you, Omar. And it only happens from the bottom up. It only happens when enough progressives get inside their local Democratic parties and take it over. And then when you get a critical mass of local Democratic parties that have flipped progressive, they will flip the national party progressive. But we're nowhere near as close to that as we need to become. And it's because people are not volunteering to participate.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you, so in the Senate and the House, aren't there some moderate Democrats, moderate Republican, and moderate
There's no such thing as a moderate Republican anymore, Omar. And the moderate Democrats are not moderates, they're corporate shills. I mean, we just need to throw that word in the trash. There's no such thing as moderation anymore in politics. Omar, thanks for the call. Always so nice to hear from you. I appreciate it. It is, 22 minutes and a half past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. You know, corporate raiders, when they acquire a company, basically strip it down. They take everything of value out of it, put it in their own pockets, leave just a husk of a company. I watched, Bain Capital do this with Clear Channel. In fact, they just ran it into bankruptcy. And they run off with all the cash. Well, that's what Donald Trump is doing to America right now. He's basically behaving like a corporate raider, taking, all the assets of this company and handing as many of them as possible off to billionaires and shutting down programs that benefit average working class people. This is, an all billionaire cabinet or largely billionaire cabinet with a billionaire president, and they're dancing to the tune of the billionaires. It shouldn't surprise us, I suppose, but there's a whole article about it over at my Daily Take entitled Trump's Hostile Takeover of America, the Corporate Raiders' Final Heist, over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Roll up, join the fight. We're taking on the billionaires, we're bringing back your rights. The revolution's here, we're knocking on the door. Welcome to Bernie's Anti-Oligarchy Tour. Bernie's Anti-Oligarchy Tour. Stand right up, don't be poor. He's fighting for the people, marching shore to shore. Bernie's Anti-Oligarchy Tour. Knocking down that greed built door. No billionaires control us anymore. Sick, you're not to blame. Or do they say we can't, but we say we can? He's got the workers hand in hand. They rig the system, but we break it down. The power's shifting town to town. Oh, Bernie's Anti-Oligarchy Tour.
And now Congressman Jim McGovern is speaking up and speaking out. He just eviscerated Republicans on the floor of the House last night. Here's what he said. He said, Democrats offered an amendment to protect Medicaid. Every Republican voted no. Democrats offered an amendment to extend tax cuts for people making under $400,000 a year while ensuring that corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. Every Republican voted no. Democrats offered an amendment preventing tax giveaways for people earning over $1 million a year. Every Republican voted no. To vote against tax breaks for people earning over $100 million a year. Every Republican voted no. We offered an amendment preventing tax cuts for people with a net worth of over, get this, $1 billion. Every Republican voted no. These Republicans betrayed their constituents. They voted to steal from the American people in order to protect their tax cuts for billionaires. God bless Jim McGovern. I mean, you know, it's like we need more Democrats to be speaking out and telling the truth. We need more. And one of the things that you can do when you reach out to your Democratic member of Congress is beg them to start doing town halls, or even do town halls in the red districts in their states, like what Ro Khanna is doing and what Mark Pocan does, where they go into the red districts where the Republicans are refusing to do town halls, and they hold town halls for those Republicans. Please reach out to your Democratic members of the House of Representatives. The number is 202-224-3121, and let them know about this brilliant idea. We'll be back on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I have to tell you about the Republicans' far-right budget and the essence of tyranny, and I'll be picking up your calls, so stay tuned.
The Epic History of the Wars for the Holy Lands by New York Times bestselling author Dan Jones. This is from chapter 1. It begins the book, The Count and the Imam. Count Roger of Sicily lifted his leg and farted. "By the truth of my religion," he exclaimed, "there is more use in that than in what you are here to say." His advisors stood chastened and a little perplexed. The Count before them was in his late 40s and salted to his bones with the experience of military campaigning in southern Italy and the islands of the central Mediterranean. As a young warrior, he had been described by one flatterer as tall and well-made, a most fluent speaker, shrewd in counsel, far-sighted in the planning of things to be done, cheerful and pleasant to everyone. In middle age, he had hardened somewhat and was not one to waste his words on fools. The plan the advisors had recommended had seemed like a good one, as courtiers' plans very often do, before they are shredded by the critiques of short-tempered potentates. Not far across the sea from Sicily, roughly 75 miles at the closest point, lay the remains of what had in ancient times been called Carthage, afterward the Roman province of Africa, and now in the 11th century, Ifriqiya. Its cities, including the capital Mahdia and on the coast, and Kairoun Island, where a vast mosque and school had for many generations been frequented by the greatest philosophers and natural scientists in North Africa, were under the shaky command of a crumbling dynasty of Berber Muslims known as the Zirids. The countryside was controlled by various Arab Bedouin tribes sent from Egypt to drive the Zirids out. Political stability was collapsing. Here lay warm and fertile farmlands. There sat prosperous port towns, all ripe for the taking. Roger's counselors thought so, and they had therefore recommended to their testy overlord the proposal of a cousin whom one source names only as Baldwin. This Baldwin had come into possession of a great army of Christian soldiers and was casting around for somewhere godless to conquer. He had asked Roger's blessing to come to Sicily and use it as a launch pad for an invasion of Irafiqua. "I shall be a neighbor of yours," he had explained, as though this were good news. But Roger of Sicily was not feeling neighborly. Irafiqua was undoubtedly ruled by various followers of Islam, he said, but those infidels happened to be sworn partners of the Sicilians in agreements that kept the peace and allowed for a rich exchange of goods in the island's markets and ports. The last thing he wanted, he ranted to his gathered minions, was a cousin imposing on his hospitality, waging a reckless war that would disrupt Sicilian trade if it was successful, and cost him a lot of money in military support if it failed. Irafia may indeed have been vulnerable, but if anyone was going to exploit that, it was going to be Roger himself. He had spent the last 2.5 decades, almost his entire adult life, carving out his rule in the region, and it would have been a limp end indeed if he were now to put it at risk, that pursuit of, to put it at risk in pursuit of some harebrained scheme cooked up by a kinsman who had never troubled the soil of the island with his sweat. If this Baldwin wanted to fight Muslims, said Roger, he would have to find a different part of the Mediterranean in which to go about his business. There were plenty of places he could name that would be preferable to Sicily's backyard. He summoned Baldwin's personal envoy to his presence and informed him of his decisions. If his master was really serious, he said, then the best way to proceed is to conquer Jerusalem. That is how it all began. Roger, Count of Sicily, was 11th century Europe's ultimate self-made man. He was born around the year 1040 as the youngest of 12 sons sired by a minor nobleman from Normandy called Tancred of Hauteville. Given the protocols of inheritance, being born even as a second son implied a lifelong burden of rather than easy inheritance. To have 11 brothers ahead of you was a disaster. But by the end of the century, the Normans had begun to conquer their way around Western Europe. They took command of Saxon England in 1066. At the same time, southern Italy fell under their gaze, and opportunities that may have seemed limited for younger sons within Normandy itself, but for anyone prepared to travel, opportunity abounded. As a young man, therefore, Roger had left his homeland in what is now northwest France and set out for territory that already called many of his kinsmen and countrymen, the rich but unstable southern Italian regions of Calabria and Apulia. Toe and heel of the Italian boot, Calabria and Apulia were lands where resources were plentiful, authority was contested, and an ambitious young man with a yen for politics and warfare might make his name. Other Normans of the Hauteville clan had already found success here, fighting against the rival superpowers in the region, principally the Byzantine Greeks and Roman popes, both of whom regarded the Normans with suspicion bordering on alarm. The book Crusaders, The Epic History of the Wars for the Holy Lands by Dan Jones.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Come gather round, let me tell you the score. The man in the White House is scheming for more. He pardons the guilty, he jails the poor. Oh, the times are in danger again. He stacks up the courts, he silences foes, rewrites the law so his power just grows. The votes, they don't count when the strong men impose. Oh, the times are in danger again. So rise up, my friends,
Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Last night, the House Republicans, 217 to 215. Every Republican except one, Thomas Massey of Kentucky, voted for this budget resolution. Every Democrat, all 215, voted no. In fact, remarkably, one of the Democrats, Representative Brittany Peterson, had just given birth, but she came anyway with her newborn. And Representative Kevin Mullen also showed up. He's a Democrat from California, even though he'd just gotten out of the hospital after surgery. So, I mean, it's like, the Democrats are really fighting this good fight right now. But nonetheless, it passed. And specifically what this budget measure does is it calls for $4.5 trillion in tax breaks for billionaires, $2 trillion in spending cuts, $880 billion of that from most likely Medicaid. So get ready, grandma's going to get thrown out of her nursing home. It raises the debt limit by $4 trillion. We are now spending more money servicing our debt than we spend on our military. And that's a really, really bad milestone. And you can thank 100% of that. It can be attributed to Reagan's tax cuts, Bush's tax cuts, and Trump's tax cuts. And now the Republicans want to make it even worse. This is two Santa Clauses on absolute screaming steroids. Originally, there were three House Republicans who were going to vote against this, Spars, Burchett, and Davidson, but Trump reached out and scared the hell out of them, or maybe Musk did, I don't know. But here we are. Meanwhile, Robert Reich points out that what's really going on here is that is not just that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are stealing everything that's not nailed down and firing everybody they can in order to free up government money for tax cuts for themselves. The 2 billionaires and the 13 billionaires in Trump's cabinet, and the 3 billionaires, the 3 richest men in America who stood with him when he got elected. And by the way, Jeff Bezos had just announced over on Musk's social media sewer that he's going to change the editorial bias of the Washington Post. From now on, it's going to be free markets, which means pro-billionaire, and free speech, which means that billionaires get to spend as much money as they want on politics. So it looks like the Washington Post is going to be going hard right. This is not good. But anyhow, what Robert Reich is pointing out is that what Musk is trying to do is he's trying to consolidate the use of force. Now, why would he want to do that? Well, because at some point, the American people are going to start protesting in a big way. And when they do, Trump wants to be able to send the military in and shoot at people or otherwise punish them, imprison them. And he wants to make sure that the military will go along with that. He wants to make sure that the Justice Department will go along with that. He wants to make sure that the FBI will go along with that. And thus, what we're looking at is really, by any definition, the beginning of a genuinely tyrannical form of government that Trump and Musk envision. So we'll see where this goes. But not good. Not good at all. So what's on your mind today? Ziggy in Oneonta, New York. Hey, Ziggy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Before I get to my topic, I just want to mention that last week you had people asking for me to put some anti-Trump material out there.
Yeah.
And I just want to say it's not going to happen. I use 2 fulfillment services, and their centers have pulled down all my anti-Trump items altogether. And just to give you an example, yesterday they pulled down my bumper sticker that said "End welfare for the rich." So
really?
It's going to be much more difficult for me to be putting items like that up on my sites.
Wow. So are you looking for different fulfillment services?
I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Right now, I'm out protesting as much as possible and everything. But the other thing I wanted to get to you about is Medicare. I've been on Medicare for years, and I think you know the original Medicare. Mm-hmm. And typically, when I go to the doctor, the clinic visit is $130. I pay $20. Medicare pays $110 of it. Mm-hmm. This year, the first visit I had, it was flipped around. I had to pay the $110. Medicare paid the $20. On the second visit, the visit was denied, and I was charged a service charge from Medicare of $30. So now I'm going to have to pay $160 for that particular.
Are you certain you didn't get flipped into a Medicare Advantage program?
Nope. I'm still original Medicare.
And do you have a Medicaid, a Medigap policy?
No. Matter of fact, I used to tell you over the years I was so proud because it was much better savings by having a Medigap, having to pay the original myself than having a Medigap.
Right.
So no, I'm just straight Medicare.
So maybe it's time to get a Medigap policy?
I don't know what to tell you. All I know is what's happened to me.
Yeah. That's wild. It's invisible to me because my Medigap policy covers everything that Medicare doesn't. I haven't, paid.
Well, I got a funny feeling that if they keep messing around with this, I personally, I think someone's messing with the program. But I have no proof of that. All I can tell you is what's happened to me.
That's interesting.
And that's exactly what happened. Okay.
That's interesting. Well, it'll be interesting to see if anybody calls and says that the same thing has happened to them.
Okay. I just wanted to make everyone aware because, I'm concerned. No question about it.
Yeah, I totally get it. Ziggy, thank you. And be sure to let us know if or when you find a new fulfillment service so that people can go back to ordering good stuff from you.
I'm putting items up, but I try to make it as generic to get it past the censors.
Yeah, which is just terrible. So much for free speech in America. Ziggy, thank you.
Right, exactly.
Good luck.
All right, you're welcome.
Yep. Eric in Cadillac, Michigan. Hey, Eric, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I want to start with my disclaimer. I am not a mathematician, nor am I an accountant. But I just watched Fox News. It was horrible, as usual. And the Doge group was up there talking about that email letter that they had sent to employees. And where I'm going with this is, in addition to saying that there's all these 200-year-old people getting thousands of Social Security checks, millions of dead people getting Social Security checks, now he's saying, and I heard it with my own 2 ears, that basically there are fake government employees now, people that are just getting government paychecks that don't actually work for the government. And what I find interesting about the Republican rah, chest-thumping in victory about all this is, and this is where, again, not an accountant, but if the government mailed out hundreds of thousands of checks over the course of a year that were for thousands and thousands of dollars, and all of these dead people are getting these checks, or people that don't exist, wouldn't that stand to make the argument that Doge should have accountants and not hackers, because there are hundreds of millions of dollars in uncashed checks?
Yeah, if you're
laying around in.
No, I'm completely with you. If you're trying to find financial fraud, waste, or mismanagement, you hire accountants. If you're trying to seize control of government computer systems, you hire hackers, and that's what Trump and Musk have done. They've hired hackers. So, I think their agenda is pretty clear, and in many cases, their lies are just being called out left and right. It's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it reminds me, it harkens me back to a very popular sitcom from the 90s, one in which the comedian had done a 15-second bit for the intro to a Japanese comedy show, and he ended up with like 4,000 checks that he had never cashed, and he had to cash all of these anyway. But another point I wanted to ask you about, Tom, do you think that it's possible that Trump's recent assertion that he would like a federal takeover of Washington, D.C., tying this into what you said about Bezos and the military being able to deal with citizens on their terms, Trump's terms, do you think that because if D.C., and this is where I yield to your years of wisdom, D.C. is not under control of the federal government, but if it were...
It is, actually.
Wouldn't that give Trump more control of what the military... If Washington, D.C. were to lose... If that status were to change, would that make the military oppression of protesters easier? And that's a move...
I'm not sure because, there's so much federal property in D.C. and the military can protect that federal property. That was the rationale that Trump used when he had the military come in to clear Lafayette Square, which is not federal property, or at least the streets around it. I don't think this has to do with that. I think he's already got the ability to order the military to shoot people or whatever. He's got that under control now. I think this is an end run to prevent D.C. statehood. D.C. has a larger population than Wyoming or Vermont. And they both have 2 senators and a member of Congress. D.C. has nothing. I mean, it has Eleanor Holmes Norton, but she can't vote. And so, at some point, if Democrats come back into power, one of the things they're going to try and do is establish D.C. statehood. Well, if D.C. has been nailed down as 100% federal property and totally the province of the federal government, it may be much harder to make it a state. Now that's just a guess on my part, Eric. But I've been around a while. I think this is probably what's going on. I got to run, Eric. I'm sorry.
That was my second choice.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Eric.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Speaking the truth, Elon Musk would really rather you didn't know. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back, Lowell in Salem, Oregon. Hey, Lowell, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. We talked before a little bit about avoiding distractions from Trump. Now, his latest thing is this gold visa program. Now, that sounds exactly like the EB-5 visa program. Could you detail any differences in his gold versus the EB-5?
I have no idea what the EB-5 visa is. You'll have to inform me, Lowell.
Well, it's the immigrant investor program. So if you come in with money, you get a visa.
Mm-hmm. How much money?
So it already exists.
How much money does it take?
Well, it was created in 1992, but it's basically you have to create, plan to create or preserve 10 permanent full-time jobs for qualified U.S. workers. So basically, you have to come in with a
that's a pretty big caveat. I mean, you've actually got to move to the United States. You've got to start a business. You've got to hire a bunch of people. You've got to have the money and the resources to do that and to sustain it through the period of time that most businesses, for the first, 2 to 5 years lose money. You've got to be able to do all that. My understanding is that this is basically just write a check to the federal government for $5 million and boom, you're on the path. You have a path to citizenship. Russian oligarchs.
This one is 1.8 minimum.
Say that again?
1.8 million minimum for the current program is 1.8 million minimum.
Right. Well, no, I think this is just Donald Trump selling, the first step to U.S. citizenship, and I think he said, there's some very nice Russian oligarchs. Having a U.S. passport, U.S. passports are losing their luster to a large extent, sadly. But I think this is, Trump's way of reaching out. So, Kim Jong-un wants to send some spies over. No problem. $5 million a piece. Russia wants to send some spies over. No problem. $5 million a piece. People to disrupt what's going on here. People who, oligarchs who simply want to have an American passport so that they can travel more easily in some parts of the world. I just see it as another disgusting and nefarious program. Lowell, thanks for the call. I've got to move along here. Tom in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I just heard something yesterday. Just by chance, I heard the beginning of the White House press conference yesterday.
Yeah.
And they welcomed a quote-unquote new voice, in there. They gave them the first thing. It was a group called Semaphore. And I looked them up, and it's SEMAFOR. And it's a front group for the Chinese Communist Party and all the businesses that do business with China.
Are you certain? I thought Semaphore was just a new news organization.
Yes, it is a news organization, absolutely. But if you go to Wiki and you read on Semaphore, it is a front group for the businesses that do business with China and also for the Chinese Communist Party and something called the China Global Initiative.
Huh. So this is more international oligarchy.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. it has red flags up all over it.
Yeah.
If you read the thing, it was started by someone from BuzzFeed and New York Times, but it's semaphore. Just go to the wiki page and read it. It's silly.
I'll have to check it out,
why
Tom.
is it coming in?
I didn't know. Thanks for the heads up. I'm telling you, we have the smartest people in the world who listen to this program. Tom, thank you. I will check it out. It's 9 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. You know, they wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
I was tangled in the headlines, caught up in the noise. The weight of the world had stolen my joys. I grabbed my coat, left my phone behind. Told myself it's time to unwind. The city fades as the highway bends. The air turns clean where the pavement ends. Go find your mountain, your valley, your stream, where the air feels lighter and your soul can dream. When the world feels heavy, let it all fall away. There's peace in the wild where the trees softly sway.
That's what Louise and I are going to be doing Friday of this week, day after tomorrow, and all of next week. Jefferson Smith will be filling in for me, so please treat him nicely. He's a wonderful guy. And we're going to take a little bit of a break. It's been a really insanely intense period of time here. So anyhow, what's on your mind here? Brooks in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Brooks, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I wanted to thank you for having Bernie on this morning.
Oh, thank Bernie.
And I wanted to thank Bernie as well for the passion and for what he's doing. It is so impressive what he's doing with his anti-oligarchy.
For a guy in his 80s.
I know, it's incredible. And I wanted to pass along one thought, and that's that if he could enlarge his anti-oligarch tour big time and bring in a bunch of the people that are going to carry this movement forward.
Yeah.
The political folks, and give them exposure.
Yeah, do it like the Sexy Liberal tour, turn it into an ensemble, you mean?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Send them all out there.
Can you see Bernie and Liz Cheney, or Liz Warren, Elizabeth Warren, and Jamie Raskin, and a handful of other good progressive Democrats?
I'd like to see Pete Buttigieg also.
Yeah. Yeah.
The carry forward guys that are going to carry this kind of a movement forward.
I'm with you, Brooks. I'm with you. Brooks, thanks a lot. That was a great suggestion. We'll try to pass it along to him. Bill in South Beach, Oregon, listening on KYAQ. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Well, Tom, first time. I've been listening to you for a long time, but first time I've been able to get through. But
thank you.
I've got one question for you. I was reading on the Washington Spectator, and they had an article about, let me bring it up here real quick. It's called, it was a Supreme Court decision back in 1971 called Bevins versus 6 unknown named agents of Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and it established that a federal official who violates constitutional rights can be sued by a person,
Oh,
a
that's
regular
interesting.
person.
I was unaware of that.
And I'm just wondering if these people that are being fired couldn't sue these people, and maybe even a class action suit for $100 billion against Musk.
Yeah. I doubt they get $100 billion or even be able to get a suit that big going, but certainly they could sue for, a couple of years worth of income, something like that, specific damages. Although I don't know, Bill. I'm unfamiliar with that Supreme Court decision, and I also have never seen any news stories about anybody actually using it. I mean, when was the last time you read about somebody successfully suing a federal official?
Yeah, well, this guy did back in 1971, and he won.
Yeah.
He went up to the Supreme Court,
right,
and he won.
Huh. I'll have to look into that. My sense of it is that everybody is scrambling, looking for ways to stop, this destruction of the American government that Vladimir Putin has apparently ordered and that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are carrying out. But exactly what tools they will use and how it can be done and what the legalisms are and things like that, I'm still learning about. Bill, thanks for the call.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to hear from you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you made it through. We're hitting the top of the hour here. On the other side of this break, Greg Palast is going to drop by and tell us how the Republicans are pre-rigging right now the election for next year, for 2026. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is by Alan J. Lichtman, and it's titled Repeal the Second Amendment, The Case for a Safer America. This from the introduction, titled The Book That Must Be Written. On April 28, 1996, 28-year-old Martin Bryant stopped at an inn near his home of Newtown in Tasmania, Australia, and shot to death its 2 owners. He then drove to the former penal colony and tourist attraction of Port Arthur, where he lunched at a cafe. After eating, Bryant pulled from his sports bag a semi-automatic rifle with a 30-round magazine that he had legally purchased through a newspaper ad. With no provocation, he began firing at patrons in the cafe and its gift shop. Before the police stopped his shooting spree, Bryant had murdered 35 and wounded 18 others. His motive remains unknown. There were people everywhere, bodies, said witness Lynn Beavis. I thought at the time, being a nurse, I've seen dead people, I've seen blood, I've seen things like this, but what I saw in there, nobody but perhaps a soldier would know what that was like. The leadership of a shocked nation responded to the Port Arthur massacre, not with thoughts and prayers, but with decisive action. The country's conservative-led government rebuffed their gun lobby and its American ally, the NRA, to adopt comprehensive national gun controls. In a 2015 broadside labeled Australia, There Will Be Blood, the NRA charged that those regulations, which Australia significantly tightened as of 2002, have, quote, robbed Australians of their right to self-defense and empowered criminals. If the NRA was right, America, with its lax control over firearms for alleged self-defense, should be one of the world's safest countries, certainly far safer than Australia, where criminals presumably evade gun controls to prey on defenseless, law-abiding citizens. Yet in the latest reporting year, gun homicides claimed 14,542 American lives, compared to 27 in Australia. And all homicides took 19,510 American lives, compared to 222 in Australia. Since the NRA issued its warning, firearm homicides have declined in Australia, while soaring by 3,534 in the U.S. An American is now over 30 times more likely per capita than an Australian to be murdered by a gun, and 7 times more likely to be murdered by any means. If we had rates comparable today to Australia's, some 14,000 American lives would have been saved from firearm homicides in 2017 alone. By the gun lobby's twisted logic, Japan, which has one of the world's strictest gun control laws, should be drenched in innocent blood. Yet out of a population of 127 million, shooters in Japan murdered only 3 persons and injured only 5 in firearm assaults throughout 2017. Australia and Japan are not outliers. As compared to residents of our closest peer democracies in the G7 group of nations plus Australia, an American in 2017 was over 20 times more likely to die from a gun homicide. The gun lobby would have you forget limited to murders. In 2017, 23,854 Americans died from gun suicides, 64% more than were killed in firearm homicides. As compared to the peer nations, the 2017 per capita rate of firearm suicides in the United States was 7 times higher, while the rate of suicides by other means was 40% lower. These other democracies all have strict firearm regulations. None has a constitutional right to keep or bear arms, a distinction the United States shares worldwide only with Guatemala, whose gun murder rate is the 3rd highest of some 195 nations worldwide. Why has America lagged behind the democratic world in protecting its citizens from needless death and injury? The culprit is not spending by the NRA on campaigns and lobbying, which other pressure groups exceeded. The real problem is that which gun control advocates fear to name, the Second Amendment. Led by the NRA, the gun lobby exploits a historically defective, perverse reinvention of this amendment to inspire their grassroots supporters, sell guns, and provide constitutional cover for their opposition to making us safer by regulating firearms. The competing movement for gun control has floundered in response to the gun lobby's triumphant marketing of the Second Amendment. Gun control advocates have righteous zeal and noble motives, but lack a winning strategy. Instead of forthrightly refuting the lobby's bogus claims, the gun control movement has instead fallen into the trap of lamely insisting, "Oh, we support the Second Amendment, but we also support responsible gun control." With such a self-defeating strategy, the movement can never win. It plays on the gun lobby's home turf and fails to rally the American majority that favors stricter firearms regulations. It provokes only scorn from a gun lobby that dismisses yes but assurances as rank hypocrisy, and it ignores the clear history and the true meaning of the Second Amendment itself. The movement for gun control must strike hard with a new strategy. Repeal of the Second Amendment is not only but realistic. It would break open the political logjam and open a path for the comprehensive national gun control and safety measures that have eluded the American people for so long. None of these measures would confiscate firearms or stop Americans from using guns for hunting, sport shooting, antique collecting, or legitimate self-defense.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. These form the Second Amendment. The book Repeal the Second Amendment by Alan J. Lichtman.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to hour 2 of our program. On the line with us, our buddy, my dear friend, Greg Palast, the investigative reporter for The Guardian, The New York Times, and BBC and others. Autocracy Money Can Buy. His latest film about the latest attacks on the right to vote, Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, narrated by Rosaria Dawson, produced by George DiCaprio and Martin Sheen. You can find it over at gregpalast.com. There's also a link to it. This is today's daily take for HartmannReport.com is Greg's op-ed. Greg is our guest opinion writer today, or journalist, actually. This is a solid piece of reporting, not so much opinion, titled How Trump and the GOP Fixed the 2026 Election. Yes, 2026. Greg, welcome back to the program. So what's up with this?
Oh, boy. Well, if you remember, 3 weeks ago, I gave you a report about how I did an analysis. Remember, my day job is a data economist, and I did some technical studies for the ACLU, the NAACP, and Black Voters Matter. And I went through the numbers of vote suppression. How many votes, we talk about vote suppression. Well, what happened? And I made a very careful calculation. Still working on the newest numbers, but and these are the numbers I have presented and will present in a federal court. Kamala Harris would have had another 3,565,000 votes if not for Jim Crow vote suppression tactics. She would have won the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and the presidency. The reason I'm going back to that is say, well, wait a minute. Things are not getting better. They're getting worse. These vote suppression tactics are being cranked up, and I'm not partisan, but it's by the GOP. And so what do we have to look for in 2026? I know Trump said, you just have to vote once in 2024, and that's it, my beloved Christians, as he put it. But they're not going to do something as dramatic as call off an election. All they do is to crank up the vote suppression. And so let's look at some of the things that bent the last election. Okay. There was in 2023, the year before the election, there was a massive purge, and that's done by states. According to the United States Elections Assistance Commission, in the year before leading up to the 2024 election, there were 4,776,706 voters purged. That's the exact number from the federal government. Almost 5 million voters, in a manner that we, using methods, for example, this system called the Eric Purge system. I did a name-by-name analysis for the ACLU, and we found out that list is 63% wrong. So about 3 million voters right there were wrongly removed, overwhelmingly voters of color. So this year, 2025, is going to be the next move for the Great Purge. And is it going to get worse? Well, let me give you look at the trajectory. In 2021, Georgia purged about 500,000 voters. 198,000 of those voters, and I have their names and addresses, were wrongly purged. Now this year, before this past election, they cranked it up to 875,000 voters. In one state, they removed about 1 in 5 voters. It's just going to get worse. Why? 2 things. Number one is Eagle Eye. If you remember that, Tom.
That was the program that William Rehnquist, when he was in Arizona, rode back in the 60s. He rode that all the way to becoming Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice.
That's right. What they did was they challenged Mexican-American voters in Arizona and
Native Americans.
and Indians in other states. Well, it's come back. But now Eagle Eye It's pronounced Eagle Eye. This is created by Cleta Mitchell, Trump's lawyer, who was part of the on those calls to try to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to reverse what happened. And so now she's brought it back. Eagle Eye. It's Eagle AI is how it's spelled, because they're using artificial intelligence to challenge even more voters. And what they are doing is, there was a terrible purge system. As I've said, it's 63% wrong, overwhelmingly racist, but that's not enough for the Trumpsters. They are running campaigns to get the states to adopt Cleta Mitchell's lists, the Eagle AI lists. And here's the other problem. So it's going to be even worse. So if we had 3 million voters wrongly removed before, and in my calculations, I don't assume everyone would vote for Harris. But what we're looking at now with the Eagle AI move is a massive new increase in voters purged, and it will happen this year, which is why we can't go to sleep. And here's the other danger. I told you last time that a group called True the Vote, by August, 3 months before the election, had already challenged. This is, again, this is something we've talked about on the air here. An individual group of vigilantes, self-proclaimed vote fraud hunters. For the first time since 1946, we've had individual non-governmental people challenging voters. 3 months before the election, they had challenged 317,886 voters. That's a third of a million voters, including, as I've mentioned before, Major Gamaliel Turner, who was all these black soldiers, 4,000 soldiers, mostly were soldiers out of Fort Benning area, were challenged by the chairman of the Republican Party and lost their votes. But now it's going to get worse, because Cleta Mitchell is joining with True the Vote to include her new organization, which will be challenging voters in Pennsylvania, Georgia. And there's about 24 states that still have these Jim Crow laws on the books where you can challenge voters. And on top of it, here's the other thing I'm very, very worried about, is that we can expect a challenge to that the GOP is prepared to pass what's called the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act would require any new voter or any re-registering voters, and by the way, 31 million people a year re-register. You're going to have to prove your citizenship. Prove your citizenship, because they want to get rid of all those alien voters on the voter rolls, Tom.
Both of them.
Well, both of them. Well, actually, as I point out in the article, the state of Florida was about to remove 179,000 voters based on a federal list of people who've been deported. And they said, oh, they're still voting on our rolls, because they found a lot of guys named Jose Garcia. And guess what? Jose Garcia was deported. So they remove all the Jose Garcias. Now, here's the problem. Of the 179,000, when it was finally challenged, the state of Florida found one voter, an Austrian Republican. That was the only voter out of 179,000. However, thousands and thousands of Florida voters, almost Hispanics, never got their votes back because they were required to go into court to get their votes. You got to take off a day and prove to a judge that you are who you are, that you're an American citizen, but your last name is Garcia. Now, here's the other problem. The state of Georgia and many other states have now asked Kristi Noem to release the SAVE list, that bogus list that caused 179,000 Florida voters at risk, thousands who lost their vote, to use that, to release that same list to other secretaries of state in Georgia and other states. So they want to use that same bogus, corroded, dead wrong list to remove voters. And it's going to be, because of the way the list is constructed, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters, a lot of black voters, because of the commonality of minority names.
Yeah.
So this is brand new that's coming in. And so even if they don't get the SAVE law passed, they can still use the SAVE database because it's under the control of Kristi Noem, who's the new head of Homeland Security, which makes me feel very insecure.
Yeah.
There's other problems. I won't give you every single item on the list, but understand this is a clear and present danger right now.
So we're speaking with Greg Palast, the famous investigative reporter whose op-ed appears today at hartmannreport.com under our daily take. And Greg, we have about 2.5 minutes here before we hit a hard break.
Okay.
What can Americans do? What do you do if you find that you've been purged from the voting rolls? Do you even know, by the way, before you show up to vote? Or does that vary from state to state?
Oh, it varies from state to state. Well, you're supposed to get a postcard, but big deal. According to the way the state of Georgia sends out these postcards, and they'll send them to the wrong addresses, the return rate, they look like junk mail. And so students, especially people who are renters, they don't see it, they don't return. The return rate is 1.2%, about a little bit better than 1 out of 100
so if
cards returned.
They know that if they send 100,000 postcards into a black neighborhood, they're going to be able to knock 99,000 black voters off the rolls.
And in fact, what's more dangerous, that's the state sending out the postcard. That's dangerous enough. But now that you have this vigilante voter system, again, it was test-driven in Georgia in 2020. Yeah. It was rolled out in 2024.
Greg, why don't Democrats do this?
Because I've talked to Democratic
leaders. The Republicans would raise
civil
absolute holy hell, and that might start the process of fixing this problem.
The black leadership has told me, Reverend Jesse Jackson and others have told me, we have suffered this no matter what. We would never impose it on someone else. What they want to do is inform the public.
But it's legal.
Stop this business.
It's completely legal.
Yes. Well, what I'm very worried about on top of it is this personal challenges from True the Vote,
which
and
is also
the Eagle
legal.
AI organization.
I'm saying, like if the NFL changed the rules and said teams can have 3 additional players and half the teams said, that's just wrong. We're not going to do that. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Well, I got to tell you, Tommy, you're going to have to convince black leadership that they should use Ku Klux Klan tactics. You have to understand that the last time these personal challenges, which Eagle AI is doing, True Trump Front organization, the last time it was used was 1946 by the Ku Klux Klan. That's when my film's called Vigilantes Inc. Because
I get it.
The Klan, called themselves incorporated as Vigilantes Inc. So
but the Supreme Court has legalized it. I just don't understand.
I know.
First of all, I don't understand why Democrats aren't screaming about it. Certainly Republicans would if the tables were turned. And secondly, I don't understand why Democrats are not doing it, if for no other reason than pure political performance art.
Well, we've had Democrats like Stacey Abrams, who took, one of her complaints about the 2018 election when we looked at those massive wrong purges. That was the thing that she cited our reports.
Right.
Again, done for the NAACP and ACLU. These massive, we're talking, like I said, I have the names of 198,000 voters wrongly removed.
I get it.
And we're, that's the beginning. We'll go on the other side. We'll maybe take some calls or
sure,
I can give you some
stick around.
More of the bad news.
Stick around. Greg Palast is with us. And if you have a question for him, hang on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Although I should have announced it earlier because I think the lines are slammed right now. But if you have a question for Greg Palast, Jeremy is going to just go through and check in with everybody. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Greg, while Jeremy is checking to see, which of our callers might have a question for you, let's just continue this conversation here,
yes.
And then we'll pick this back up on the other side when we rejoin our for-profit stations.
I'm very concerned. So
what do you think is the best strategy to, other than publishing stuff in on my newsletter or something like that? What's the best strategy to get this in front of the American people?
Tell them to tune into Thom Hartmann. No, we are trying.
If you were advising Hakeem Jeffries, what would you tell him to do?
I'd say raise hell. Everyone's telling him to raise hell. But I'm not a politician. I'm just a numbers guy. No, but I think that but you know what we need? I'll tell you. I've been talking to Reverend Jesse Jackson. I've been talking to Lawrence Lessig at Harvard, the Gerald Griggs NAACP, a bunch of other civil rights leaders. And what they say, look, we have to restart the voting rights movement. A lot of people just thought, we got the Voting Rights Act of 65. We have Martin Luther King's birthday off. What's the complaint? So we don't have an active voting rights movement. We got to cross that bridge at Selma again and raise hell about this. I'm very, very concerned about these things. Then, there's other things. We have, there's Democrats prefer to vote by mail, 51% more likely than Republicans. And yet we have a massive loss. And this I got actually from NPR, but it was confirmed by other experts, that 14% of mail-in ballots are never counted. MIT told me it was a much higher number. Overwhelmingly, whose vote doesn't get counted?
Democrats.
Well, according to the state of Washington, you're 400% more likely to have your mail-in ballot discarded, disqualified on cockamamie reasons, like you left out a middle initial. And now what I'm worried about is that disqualification numbers will rise and we will not have access to ballot boxes. The state of Georgia, for example, cut the number of ballot drop boxes by 75% only in black counties, raised the number of ballot drop boxes in white counties. 10 states have either eliminated or severely limited drop boxes because this is favored by black urban voters, because the mail, as you heard for those listening into Jim Hightower, the mail is slowing down, and now Donald Trump has a plan. It's bad enough under DeJoy, who was just booted, because they want to privatize the post office, and it's been put under the Commerce Department under Trump's direct political control. This is dangerous. I talked to you about Major Turner, who lost his vote to a Ku Klux Klan style challenge by the Georgia GOP. He lost the ballot on the last race because they said his ballot didn't arrive on time. And just so you know, he was filmed filling out his ballot way ahead of time. He was training young soldiers how you fill out an absentee ballot, and they lost their votes because they said 2 weeks later, oh, your ballot hasn't come in. Too late.
Wow. Now,
this is what's happening. And understand, it's not small. The number of mail-in ballots rejected in 2024 was about 2,120,000, about somewhat over 2 million mail-in ballots were not counted. And it's overwhelmingly voters of color. Ballots are not counted for cockamamie reasons. I was just reaching Alan Lichtman, Professor Lichtman, who did the study for the Civil Rights Commission. And Professor Lichtman found that if you're black, you're 900% more likely to have your ballot disqualified than if you're white.
And this is because we have no right to vote in the United States, unlike every other democracy in the world except Hungary, which is playing the same games, by the way. These are the games that Orban plays with his voting rolls. We'll be right back with Greg Palast in just a moment. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them.
They said it was a fair fight, democracy at play. But behind the curtain, shadows stole the day. Perched from the rose, voices erased, an election twisted, democracy disgraced. But Greg Palast hit the trail with truth as his guide, exposing the schemes they tried to hide. He followed the balance, the games they spun, proving one clear fact: Trump lost, suppression won. Trump lost, but they rigged the game.
Welcome back. 24 minutes past the hour. Greg Palast is with us. And Patrick in East Lansing, Michigan, you have a question for Greg. What's on your mind today?
Patrick?
Hi, it's such a privilege to talk to Greg Palast, and thank you for everything you do, Tom. I want to talk to you about the Voting Rights Act because we know how to pass the Voting Rights Act in a Senate controlled by the Democrats with 50 votes. And President Biden finally got to the right answer that we need to have a filibuster exception so that we could pass the John Lewis Civil Rights Act and do exactly what you're saying, Mr. Palast. Barack Obama at Representative Lewis's funeral said that the filibuster shouldn't be the Jim Crow barrier to that bill. And Manchin came along and said, I would go along with the limiter by making it be the talking filibuster. Every senator talks twice, and then we're done, and then we have to vote. And he was almost ready to do a carve-out. The second way to fix this, after Biden had endorsed a filibuster exception, but Biden wouldn't agree to take the gerrymandering piece out of the vote that was going to go forward. And so Manchin pulled his vote back. Senator Angus King, independent from Maine, who was a longtime supporter of the filibuster, said, I will do this for voting rights because voting rights are too important.
Patrick, I'm running out of time. What's your question?
The question is, can we talk about the details of filibuster exceptions? Because 161 laws, including Trump tax cuts, went through on filibuster exceptions. And unless you talk about that, you're not using the lever of power, and Biden surrendered it.
Got it. Greg, we have a little less than a minute here left.
Okay, well, I don't know about it's too late. Look who's in charge now.
Yeah.
That's why I'm worried. That's why I'm talking to you about the SAVE Act. It's what we have to prevent. We have to prevent this SAVE Act from going through, because if you have a requirement that people show their birth certificate or their passport, that's about the only two documents, general documents to prove your citizenship. Do you know where your passport is, and who has passports?
Right,
Okay,
it's
when
only
you look
like
at the
5%
income
of
and
Americans
race,
have a passport, right?
Yeah, about 8% of Americans,
8%.
and that's it. And then you also have the problem that you have to have a birth certificate, an original birth certificate. Do you know where your mom put it, by the way? And so when they tried the citizenship requirement, they took it for a test drive in Kansas under Chris Kobach. He blocked the registration of 32,000 people, mostly students, and several military officers who had moved to the Lawrence Air Force Base. 32,000 people lost their vote, and he admitted in federal court that not a single one was an alien voter. Not one, but they removed 32,000 people. But that violated federal law, so their solution now is to change the federal law to say you're going to have to prove you're a citizen. Good luck.
Hang on just a second.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
You can read all about it at hartmanreport.com today on our Daily Take. There's hot links to Greg's movie, Vigilantes, Inc., the great Greg Palast. Greg, thank you. Good luck. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann University Book Club is Trump U, Promises, Lies, and Corruption, My Battle with Donald Trump's Fake University by Art Cohen with Dan Good. This is from Chapter 1, The Art and the Deal. I was in a vulnerable place. I found myself jobless in early 2009 after my consumer electronics company went through a forced sale. I'd poured my life into Ariel Inc. You might remember our Audio Bug FM transmitters, ladybug-shaped devices that aired music from portable devices over a car radio. After Apple's iPod became all the rage, we developed, manufactured, and licensed products for major retailers and brands such as Best Buy's Dynex, Iriver, Kensington, SanDisk, XM Radio, and Delphi. Later, we looked to expand our wireless music transmission offerings with our own i21 brand, working seamlessly with the debut in 2007 of a new iPhone. Everything was going well until it wasn't. The consumer electronics industry was hit hard by the 2008 recession. Our major investor wanted to restructure the company and install new management. I was out as CEO in 2009. I wanted to find something new and fast. It wasn't a great time to be unemployed. The national economy was tanking, and to top it off, Silicon Valley isn't a cheap place to live. I worried about providing for my wife and two sons. At age 44, I found myself at a crossroads an inflection point in my career. After spending 5 years as a CEO, I wanted to do something different and carve a new path. And then I came across a special invitation in the mail and a full-page ad in the San Jose Mercury News promoting an opportunity. Do you think you can profit in this market? You can, and I'll show you how, proclaimed the advertiser's headline underneath a photo of real estate developer Donald Trump. The ad promised the opportunity to learn from Donald Trump's hand-picked experts. He's the most celebrated entrepreneur on earth. He's earned more in a day than most people do in a lifetime. He's living a life many men and women only dream about, and now he's ready to share with Americans like you the Trump process for investing in today's once-in-a-lifetime real estate market. Come to this free introductory class, and you'll learn from Donald Trump's hand-picked instructors a systematic method for investing in real estate that anyone can use effectively. You'll learn foreclosure investing from the inside out. You'll learn how to finance your deals using other people's money. You'll learn how to overcome your fear of getting started. End quote. The ad featured a guarantee attributed to the man himself. I can turn anyone into a successful real estate investor, including you. So, why not me? Donald Trump was a name I trusted. I grew up in Philadelphia, less than 100 miles from Trump's home base, New York City, so I was familiar with his success as a real estate developer and as an author of the 1987 bestseller, The Art of the Deal. I'd made the hour-long drive to Atlantic City, New Jersey a couple times, and his last name was splashed across the casinos, T-R-U-M-P, and flashing lights. I consider the name Trump synonymous with success and wealth. At least that's what it meant for me back then. During the mid-'80s, while a student at Drexel University, I was one of the co-founding members of the D-Users, widely acknowledged as the first Macintosh users group. I was invited to a Hollywood-style event called Going National, hosted by Drexel on its campus. There, I met the legendary Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple. His inspiring talk that day imagined future computers using artificial intelligence to have conversations with the dead. Not literally, but using inputs known about, for example, Abraham Lincoln. The AI would bring Lincoln to life so you could have a modern-day conversation with him as if he were alive today. Jobs' talk inspired me to lead a team tasked during a competition with imagining the personal computer of the year 2000. There we were, to present our vision with an impressive panel. Science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, futurist Alvin Toffler, education writer and historian Diane Ravitch, computer pioneer Alan Kay, and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. A team from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign won the competition. They envisioned a tablet device that sounded an awful lot like the eventual iPad. During a luncheon, I got to sit at a table with Bradbury, and we began talking. He was amiable. He told me how his writing career didn't take off right away. He kept at it, day by day, year by year, and eventually success and fame found him. I love science fiction, and Fahrenheit 451 is one of my favorite books. Besides my father, Bradbury probably inspired me more than anyone else as a writer, something I enjoy doing in my spare time. The Project 2000 contest was beneficial in another way. It allowed me to connect with Apple employees and give them my resume. By 1989, I was moving to California as an Apple employee. I worked as an engineer at Apple until the mid-'90s, during the time before Steve Jobs returned to the company. I left to join a company called General Magic, where I worked on product and project management. During my time there, I bumped into a French-born computer programmer who said his wife came up with an idea about selling stuff from around the house online. Everybody laughed about it. I guess Pierre Omidyar got the last laugh. His
is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other
minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
I remember when you stood tall, proud and free, waving the banner of democracy. Eisenhower warned of power. Goldwater said corruption must be kept in check. But now I see you bow your heads to a liar wrapped in gold and red. He breaks the laws, he spits on truth, and still you march behind his boots. Will you salute the tyrant, kneel down low, or stand for the country you used to know? History's watching, the world can see. Will you fight for the republic, or let it cease to be? Once you swore no man should rule unchecked. Now you let him burn the nation wreck by wreck. Reagan spoke of freedom's fight. Now you shun the press and dim the light. You praise the wealth, ignore the cries. Let billionaires control our lives. They buy your votes, they write your laws, and still you cheer. Have you no cause? Will you salute?
Welcome back. 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls. What's on your mind today? Jerry in Kissimmee, Florida. Hey, Jerry, what's up?
Hey, Tom. It's been a long time. I want to mention two things. The last is about you spoke with an African-American woman looking for places that she should consider. I'll get to that. But as far as the Democratic Party and progressive us going after Musk, it's the right thing. He's a good evil villain. But I think what needs to be said a lot of times is, what has this man done for America? Where's the Musk Hospital, the Musk Scholarships, the Musk Cancer Research Fund? Where is the Musk money going into Alzheimer's research to do anything that benefits America? Yet he's the richest man allegedly in the world.
Well, he's got 13 children. I mean, that's expensive.
Of course. So, I think pointing him out as the evil Darth Vader, but along with that, we should point out some things that he could be doing, because many of us know Andrew Carnegie, the robber barons, the Fords, the Rockefellers, but they left the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation. Carnegie built libraries. There was some good towards the end of their life of what they did that helped Americans. But anyway, last week you had a lady, I hope she's listening, an African-American caller who was looking at places to consider to relocate as a person
outside the United States, yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to just say quickly, you have the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. John, St. Thomas, St. Croix. It's a U.S. territory, more or less. They speak English. You could use the American dollar, and it's a great place to live. Actually, my father was from St. Croix. Mm-hmm. On the African continent, of course, you have Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, where they speak English. You can become a citizen of Ghana. It's very easy to open up a business there and do very well. I have a lot of friends who have relocated there. The Mauritius Islands off of the east coast in the Indian Ocean of Africa, they look for retirees to move there. Low cost of living, beautiful place. And then on the other side of the world, in Gulf, you have Panama. There's a lot of African-Americans, expats who live there. Belize is another place. And then lastly, if you go to Asia, you have, of course, Thailand. And I have a friend who went to Bali and loved it, went back, retired, opened up a little inexpensive spa and resort. And he says to me all the time, if you ever come, you won't want to go back to the U.S. Wow. So those are some places that I want to suggest that if she's serious about it, that she could consider. But the U.S. Virgin Islands is a beautiful place. It's stable. You got a choice of islands to relocate to. And it's it's in the Caribbean. Yeah, but it's like being here in the States.
Yeah. Jerry, you just proved my assertion that I have the smartest listeners in all of radio. Jerry, thank you for that. That was absolutely brilliant. You should publish a little pamphlet or something, or put up a website. That was great. Jerry, thank you. Thank you so much. Mike in Cleveland, Georgia. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Oh, how about a Hail Mary? I think that the solution is probably at hand. These critters have got all their ill-gotten gain. I know 99% of them have got compromise. They can't make a move. They all want power. They've already got more money they can spend. They're old. All they got to do, if they want to have a legacy, is just quit. Take their stuff, take all their ill-gotten gains, go home, make a protest, quit. You'll be in the history books. You'll save the democracy, Democrat and House and Senate both. All you old critters that got your money, you can't spend it. You can still keep up with your prison money, all your different 9 yards of graft. You ain't got to give none of that up, but you could be a hero to the world.
Yeah, no,
This is an opportunity for 3 or 4 people to do something.
I get it, Mike, and you're mentioning compromise against the Republicans reminded me of one of the first things Putin did early on in his presidency in the early 2000s, which was to direct the intelligence services of Russia to look at the politicians in the Duma, and so that he could get blackmail material or compromise on individual politicians who might challenge him. And I'm wondering if we're going to see Kash Patel now directing the FBI to look into the lives, the details, the blackmailable secrets of particularly Republicans, but also Democrats in the House and in the Senate, as a way of building a compromise file on them. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Mike, thanks. That was very thoughtful.
That only applies if they're staying. If they walk away from that, if they just retire, they say their health won't stand it, or they've had enough.
There's always another one who will come behind them. I mean, there's always somebody willing to sell out their country for enough money or power.
Opportunity to change this, stop it in its tracks right now.
Yeah, I get it. Mike, thanks for the call. Jan in Tucson, Arizona. Hey, Jan, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Taking you off speaker. My call is I was having a conversation with my husband this morning, and he was reading on Apple News, and I know you're always wondering about Trump's relationship with Putin.
Mm-hmm.
And he read an article that was very interesting. He was telling me about it, that he believes that there are people out there that believe, and they just don't have any evidence to prove it, that Trump could be a KGB agent.
Yeah, there's a
and
second.
Probably has been since the 80s.
Yeah, some years ago, Craig Unger wrote a book in which he interviewed a former KGB agent by the name of Yuri Shevets. And Yuri Shevets, and again, this came out like 5, maybe a little longer. Yuri Shevets said that in the 80s, in 87 specifically, Donald Trump was recruited by the KGB and basically groomed for what he's doing right now, whether he knew it or not. But now another guy has come out and he has said Trump's code name was it Rostov? Am I remembering that correctly? It was something like that. Which was
what?
Rostov, I think, which it was the code name that they gave Trump, and that was the name of a famous East German defector, and double agent, and that he's saying the same thing. Now that story originally went up on the Daily Beast, and the Daily Beast then 24 hours later took the story down. The story had been reported on by a couple of other American media outlets. They have now taken all those stories down. So whether these stories are being taken down because they're based on something that wasn't truthful, I mean, there have been journalists who have verified that this guy who's being quoted actually was a KGB agent and, kind of has turned against the KGB, or whether they're being threatened with lawsuits by Trump, or, nobody knows because Daily Beast is refusing to say. And the other outlets, are not speaking out either. So I just don't know. I don't know if
so you don't know how to investigate something like that.
Yeah,
but it kind of makes a lot of sense to me.
It makes a hell of a lot of sense, and it would explain an awful lot of what's going on right now, and has been for the last 8 years. Jan, thanks so much for the call. It would even explain, 10, 15 years back, Trump promoting his birtherism conspiracy against Barack Obama. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Excuse me, I had the name wrong for Comrade Trump. It was Comrade Krasnov. That was his code name, according to this guy. Welcome back. Well, and picking up your calls here, Ragnar in Mount Vernon, Washington. Hey, Ragnar, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Trump. I would say hello, Trump. Anyway,
how's my Norwegian brother here, Ragnar?
Thinking about the mental sickness of our president and all he thinks about his revenge, in life. But anyway, the reason I'm calling is my concern for the children of this country. What's happening to a lot of these people are being laid off for work and creating a household full of anxiety and trauma, which is going to be, absorbed in the children. And from my experience as a child under dictatorship, Second World War, where our parents were scared to death all the time, we were afraid that the German soldiers were going to come in and grab you and haul you away. And we listened and saw all of this, and even today I live with the trauma that I experienced back in those years. Mm-hmm. And this is a big concern I have for the children of this country if this keeps on the way it is right now.
I'm with you, Ragnar. And the largest employer in the United States, which is the federal government, is now going through a series of massive layoffs. And if they think that's not going to, take a tire iron to the economy, they're crazy. In addition to but your point, the individual price that is paid and the anxiety and everything. That was brilliant. Yep. Ragnar, thanks so much for sharing that. And
you bet. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, always good hearing from you. Thank you. Lena in Safety Harbor, Florida. Hey, Lena, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'm calling following up on your call from Ziggy regarding Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I have had regular Medicare with the co-insurance, as you described. We wouldn't touch managed care. That's a scam.
Right.
And we have high premiums, but we never had to pay anything. We would get, the notices from Medicare as to what was covered. I got a huge fat envelope yesterday from Medicare, and for the first time, I'm seeing denials.
Really?
They never before denial. And, often they would say, you might be billed $20. Well, we were never billed. This time it said you might be billed just under $900.
Whoa.
So something is happening. And I will tell you, we would never change what we had because what we had was wonderful.
It sounds like they're trying to kill Medicare. They're trying to piss people
exactly.
off.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. My question of you is, I know this is right on the spot, but I want to make some calls. And who do you think would be best?
Well, I would start with Ro Khanna and Mark Pocan and identify yourself as somebody who heard about this on my program and you have a story to tell to confirm it. And Ziggy should probably call both of their offices too. They are real activists on this. Jan Schakowsky also, she's a co-signer on their Save Medicare Act. And
Ro Khanna, and who else did you say? Jan Schakowsky and who else?
Jan Schakowsky of Illinois and Mark Pocan of Wisconsin.
Mark. Okay. And can they be reached at the number that you give?
Yes, 202-224-3121.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether there's
let
any
me know what
point in
happens.
Calling Medicare.
Let me know what happens, Lena. You can call back anytime. There's only 2 more days left in this week.
Yeah.
But let us know.
I will do that.
Thank you, Lena.
Okay.
Good talking to you. Wild stuff. I haven't had a Medicare claim so far this year. Maybe I have. I haven't noticed a problem, but who knows? We'll be right back. Stick around. I'm picking up your calls. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Between 1920 and 1980, America went from the middle class being about 10 or 12% of us up to being over 60% of us. What drove that was high taxation. High tax rates. Woodrow Wilson had 91% income tax rate. Franklin Roosevelt, 90% top income tax rate. Lyndon Johnson dropped it down to 74%. But from that, throughout that entire period of time, with the exception of the Roaring 20s, this is a brief little 10-year period, 12-year period, the top income tax rate was in the neighborhood of 74 to 90%. And what that did was it caused really rich people to leave their money in their businesses and pay their workers well, and that produced the middle class. Reagan came along and dropped that top tax rate down to 25% and then 27%, and it's now in the 30s, and that's what killed the middle class. We need to bring back these high taxes. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com. Will the morbidly rich ever go back to being good citizens? Check it out.
It starts with a promise, a populist glow of how to shake the system, make the status quo go. But behind the curtain, the stage is set for a power play we won't soon forget. They charm the crowd, they seize the mic, then target the truth and dim the light. The pillars quake, the ground runs red, a democracy hangs by a thread.
9 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. Jared in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Jared, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom. My comment today, again, is I called a while back and I said there was a Twitter post when it was still Twitter that said the Democratic Party is a CIA psyop to identify good Americans and their hopes and dreams and then crush them. Again,
I get it. I'm not buying it, but I get it.
Well, I mean, it just seems like the establishment Democratic Party has continually failed us. I mean, you're constantly saying, where are the Democrats?
Yeah.
You had a caller yesterday that said the Democrats need to stop working with the progressives, and I totally disagree. That's like Bill Maher going on HBO.
No, he said the Democrats need to start working with the progressives.
Did he yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bill
At least
Maher
that was my understanding.
I must have misunderstood. But, Bill Maher, said, he was blaming the Democrats for being too progressive and working with,
Bill Maher has become a right-wing troll. It's really,
exactly.
tragic.
But, there's a sentiment of, people thinking that we need to go back center. And I really think, that we need to go far more progressive. The only people speaking out right now are the progressives. I'm in New Mexico, I'm a proud blue state, but our Heinrich is, he's kind of milquetoast. We got a large oil and gas presence in our state, and he doesn't do much. He's just a middle road Democrat. And then, after the election, I called up Ledger Fernandez, our congresswoman, and I wanted to bring up the Corey Griffin. He was the gentleman or the guy that was convicted of the attack on the Capitol. And they went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court threw out his appeal. So he is a convicted insurrectionist, and Trump let him free. So that is breaking the Constitution. And I called Fernandez and I said, our state needs to draft up articles of impeachment, or, you need to do it. Even if it's just for show, it needs to happen.
Yep.
But, she's currently making a bid for governor of our state. So I don't see her doing anything either. It's like
nobody wants billionaires like Elon Musk to come in and squash them like a bug. I mean, that's the bottom line here. When Clarence Thomas, after having years of being bribed by several billionaires, one in particular, it became the deciding vote in Citizens United. We're now in a system where every politician in both parties lives in terror of Elon Musk or of Donald Trump identifying them. And now that the media is turning so hard right, I mean, X is entirely hard right. Facebook, my understanding is turning into a right-wing sewer. The Washington Post is going to go solid right-wing. It's
And I
like
see,
a coup.
and I see the progressives are the only ones with the voice right now. You know, Bernie, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, they're speaking out. They're, you know, they're putting it on the line. You know, they're willing to take that risk to speak out. I don't see the middle row Democrats doing anything like that.
I agree, and I wish they would, and I'd like to see more of them doing that, and that's why people need to call 202-224-3121 and encourage their Democrats to get out there, do town halls, join Bernie in his tour, and all those kind of things. Jared, thank you for the call. Bob in Melbourne, Florida. Hey, Bob, thanks for listening to WMNF. What's up?
Oh, all the time. Hey, I noticed that you know, the Chinese have a phrase for it, and it's called "Bujian Guancai Bulole." Means you don't cry until you see the coffin. And I got a feeling that there's a lot of people now, because I'm VA, I'm a Vietnam veteran. And before the election, I'd go up to the VA clinic, and I would see all these guys with all these Trump stickers and Trump T-shirts and buttons on their caps and all that. And the last time I was in there, not so many. And I got a feeling that there's a couple. I got a feeling that I got a neighbor of mine who worked for the FAA for 14 years, voted for Trump, and he's fired. Okay, and he said that's not what I voted for. And I looked at him. I said, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You know,
He just didn't realize
and
it.
I got a.
He believed the lies.
Like I said, I got a feeling that there's going to be a lot of people like him. That, like I said, you don't cry until you see the coffin.
I hope so. You know, all the stories I'm hearing are from people who are directly affected by this, and that's only a few million people at the most. I mean, right now it's fewer than 100,000 who've been laid off, and so and on top of that, Trump's popularity numbers, his approval numbers, are still really high among Republicans. They're collapsing among independents, and which causes me to think that probably he couldn't win an election right now, unless it was rigged the way that they rigged 2024, the way that they're rigging 2026 and 28.
Well, my neighbor's got his Tesla up for sale. Does that tell you anything?
There you go. There you
go.
Yeah. Bob,
All right,
thanks
thanks a
for
lot,
the
buddy.
call. Yeah, good talking to you. Yeah, the old swastikars. And apparently, are the Cybertrucks made with glue? I mean, I saw this story yesterday that they actually glue on these panels. It's just weird. Anyhow, we'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls, and David Pepper in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today we're reading from Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy. in America. This is an 1856 first English translation edition of this author, and but you can still get it online. A lot of different booksellers sell it. This is from chapter 11. What sort of despotism democratic nations have to fear? I had remarked during my stay in the United States that a democratic state of society, similar to that of the Americans, might offer singular facilities for the establishment of despotism. And I perceived, upon my return to Europe, how much use had already been made by most of our rulers of the notions, the sentiments, and the wants engendered by this same social condition for the purpose of extending the circle of their power. This led me to think that the nations of Christendom would perhaps eventually undergo some sort of oppression like that which hung over several of the nations of the ancient world. But it would seem that if despotism were to be established among the democratic nations of our days, it might assume a different character, different from the Roman Empire, for example. It might be more extensive and more mild. It would degrade men without tormenting them. I do not question that in an age of instruction and equality like our own, sovereigns might more easily succeed in collecting all political power into their own hands and might interfere more habitually and decidedly within the circle of private interests than any sovereign of antiquity ever could do. But the same principle of equality which facilitates despotism tempers its rigor. When no member of the community has much power or much wealth, tyranny is, as it were, without opportunities or a field of action. As all fortunes are scanty, the passions of men are naturally circumscribed, their imagination limited, their pleasures simple. This universal moderation moderates the sovereign himself and checks within certain limits the inordinate stretch of his own desires. Independently of these reasons, drawn from the nature of the state of society itself, I might add many others arising from causes beyond my subject, but I shall keep within the limits I have laid down to myself. Democratic governments may become violent and even cruel at certain periods of extreme effervescence or of great danger. Excuse me, think of George Bush and 9/11. But these crises will be rare and brief. When I consider the petty passions of our contemporaries, the mildness of their manners, the extent of their education, the purity of their religion, the gentleness of their morality, their regular and industrious habits, and the restraint with which they almost all observe in their vices, no less than in their virtues, I have no fear that they will meet with tyrants in their rulers, but rather guardians. I think then that the species of oppression by which democratic nations are menaced is unlike anything that ever existed before in our world. Our contemporaries will find no prototype of it in their memories. I am trying myself to choose an expression which will accurately convey the whole of the idea I have formed of it, but in vain. The old words, despotism and tyranny, are inappropriate. The thing itself is new, and since I cannot name it, I must attempt to define it. I seek to trace the novel features under which despotism may appear in the world. The first thing that strikes the observation is an immutable multitude of men, all equal and alike, incessantly endeavoring to procure the petty and paltry pleasures with which they glut their lives. Think now of a television society. Each of them, living apart, is as a stranger to the fate of all the rest. His children and his private friends constitute to him the whole of mankind. As for the rest of his fellow citizens, he is close to them, but he sees them not. He touches them, but he feels them not. He exists, but in himself and for himself alone. And if his kindred still remain to him, he may be said at any rate to have lost his country. Above this race of men stands an immense and tutelary power, which takes upon itself alone to secure their gratifications and to watch over their fate. Facebook? That power is absolute, minute, regular, provident, and mild. It would be like the authority of a parent if, like that authority, its object was to prepare men for manhood, but it seeks, on the contrary, to keep them in perpetual childhood. It is well content that people should rejoice, providing that they think of nothing but rejoicing. For their happiness, such a government willingly labors, but it chooses to be the sole agent and only arbiter of that happiness. It provides for their security, foresees and supplies their necessities, facilitates their pleasures, manages their principal concerns, directs their industry, regulates the descent of property, and subdivides their inheritances. What remains but to spare them all the care of thinking and all the trouble of living? Thus, it every day renders the exercise of the free agency of man less useful and less frequent. It circumscribes the will within a narrower range and gradually robs a man of all the uses of himself. The principle of equality has prepared men for these things. It has predisposed men to endure them and oftentimes to look on them as benefits. I have always thought that the servitude of the regular, quiet, and gentle kind, which I have just described, might be combined more easily than is commonly believed with some of the outward forms of freedom, and that it might even establish itself under the wing of the sovereign of the people. Our contemporaries are constantly excited by two conflicting passions. They want to be led, and they wish to remain free. As they cannot destroy either one or the other of these contrary propensities, they strive to satisfy them both at once. They devise a sole, tutelary, and all-powerful form of government, but elected by the people. They combine the principle of centralization and that of popular sovereignty. This gives them a respite. They console themselves for being in tutelage by the reflection that they have chosen their own guardians. And it continues. It's a brilliant book, A Democracy in America by de Tocqueville.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. You know, one of my favorite newsletters over on Substack is David Pepper's. It's called Pepperspectives. You can find it at David Pepper. It's spelled just like it sounds, very easy. davidpepper.substack.com. It's free. And if you're not getting it, you're missing out. This is an extraordinary newsletter. David Pepper is the former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party. He's a lawyer. He's the author of multiple books, including Saving Democracy, a user's manual for every American, and Laboratories of Autocracy. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati College of Law. And as mentioned, his Pepperspectives is available on Substack.com. David, welcome back to the program. I was just astonished by your article, I think it was yesterday or the day before, titled, "They Are Strangling Scientific Research, the Backdoor National Institutes of Health Freeze." Tell us about this and why we should care.
I'm trying to do my best right now to talk to people who are insiders to tell me the answer to the question you just asked. And I was as alarmed as you were, and that's why I tried to capture it. So we all know a court basically put a stay on these funding freezes. But the Trump administration is sort of backdooring the freeze, and they're doing it. There's a process that to review the thousands of grants that come in. There's a process that requires panels of people, of experts, to review proposals. And the law requires that those panel meetings be advertised or posted in the Federal Register. And what the Trump administration is doing is simply not posting the meetings, so they can't happen, so the proposals are not reviewed, and so the money won't go out. They're literally just ignoring the court order through this sort of wrench. And so you already see graphs of NIH money plummeting in the first months of 2025. So it's clearly lawless. Someone on the inside clearly knows what they're doing. But the longer term, and this is what I tried to capture beyond describing this really sneaky way they're stopping giving out grant money, the damage being done if they continue to just not give out NIH money is devastating as a matter of of both national and global health, as a matter of near-term individual cures that are in the pipeline but will get stopped. And as I try and emphasize, and this is sort of more the politician in me, try to figure out how you get people in Congress to care, these are devastating cuts to Ohio State, to Alabama, to Michigan. You name the red state, the major universities of every state in this country get hundreds of millions of dollars, feeding to thousands of jobs. And if the NIH research is cut off, that's what's going to be lost. So, Tommy Tuberville to, Bernie Marino here, they may cheer for their state's college football team, but if they don't speak up for NIH funding, they are being part of the gutting of the universities in a key revenue source for them. So the damage of this is enormous, both short and long term. And I hope people start to really wake up and make some noise about it.
Joe Biden famously had his cancer moonshot, is what he referred to, which was funded through the National Institutes of Health, I believe. an attempt to find a cure for cancer in our lifetimes. There's lots of other really important research that's been funded by the National Institutes of Health, just a whole spectrum of it. We are the world's leader, literally the leader of the entire planet in terms of scientific, particularly pure science research. And all of is it that all of that is on hold now, or just most of it? And why do you think this is the case? I mean, this goes beyond just Trump hating everything Biden did, like the cancer moonshot. There's got to be an agenda behind this.
Well, a couple things. So if you can't have, you have the indirect cost cut, which would gut universities. That's been stayed by a court. You have the overall freeze that's also been stayed by a court. But if they do not allow these basically review meetings to happen from here forward, there's no money coming out. And it's, well, you ask why. One, there's clearly a huge anti-science. Oh, but let's go back to this for a second. The U.S. doesn't just lead in a little bit in this category. This is one of our great global advantages. It's one of our great strengths is that we do biomedical research better than anybody. And one of the things that's happening is American researchers or other researchers in America are already looking to go to other countries to do the work there, which means we would be sacrificing this massive innovation advantage we have and shipping it off to, England or Germany or somewhere else. That's a risk. But you ask about, I wrote another thing on this a few weeks ago. If you, and you've read all this stuff because you've read everything. If you read the philosophy of J.D. Vance around the universities and colleges of this nation, he basically says, I want to destroy them until they are doing advancement of our conservative agenda. Right. It's very similar to Orban and what he did to universities. So my fear is they know that NIH funding, just like they want to go after endowments, NIH funding is a big part of the strength of American universities, and cutting off that funding is a way for them to long-term shift universities away from what they think is some kind of liberal competitor and turn them into institutions that serve conservative interests, just like Orban did in Hungary. And if that means that jobs are lost or other things are lost in their attack on universities, for them, that's part of getting what their agenda, what their agenda is done.
Orban actually drove a university out of Hungary altogether. I mean, it was pretty amazing. So let me get this straight, David. We're talking with David Pepper. Check out his newsletter over at davidpepper.substack.com. It's free and it's brilliant. So let me get this straight. Science is now a liberal plot? What am I missing? Or are you saying they're just trying to turn all the universities into Hillsborough College? David, you just froze. Oh, I think we lost David. Oh, there he is. Okay, he's back. All right, so let's, David, I don't know, did you hear my question?
No, I did. Ask that last one again. I heard most of it.
Sure. So number one, is science now part of a liberal plot? And number two, or is this just about trying to turn all of our major universities into Hillsborough College, into right-wing, turn out little right-wing robots machines?
I think it's the latter. It's using every leverage point they can, cut off funding, threat to tax endowments. I mean, J.D. Vance literally said this in his speech a couple years ago, and the speech was entitled, "The Universities Are the Enemy."
Wow.
And I think the goal here is to do it is the second. It is to use every piece of leverage they can to do what Orban did and convert universities into places that simply advance conservative thought and cut them off at the knees until they do so. I mean, they basically say that in the wide open.
Yeah. So what can people do about this?
I mean, my attitude, and this is one reason I wrote this, I think the politics of this, if people figure it out, are terrible. There are cures right around the corner that will be stopped by this. That's terrible politics, be it pancreatic cancer or children's cancer or Alzheimer's. But also the economic impact of cuts to NIH to the University of Cincinnati, which is a second downtown in the city I live in, or Ohio State, or the Cleveland Clinic, devastating. And people should be calling up their senators and House members, particularly the Republican ones who are saying nothing. And if a senator of Ohio scores points by saying how great Ohio State is, which they all do, we know that, or Tommy Tuberville, they should not sit there and watch the destruction of the universities that many of the states are in the top 5 most important institutions of the state, the identity, the culture, the jobs. So I think there's a lot of politics here to our benefit if we see the threat and we start calling our senators and congressmen and demanding they speak up for institutions that are core to their state's health.
The article is They Are Strangling Scientific Research, the Backdoor NIH Freeze. It's over at davidpepper.substack.com, the Pepperspectives newsletter that you must subscribe to. As like I said, it's free. Check it out. David, thanks so much for dropping by. It's always great talking with you.
Great to be with you. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No, it's all good. And the door is always open here to you. Thank you. It's 15 minutes past the hour. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a second. Stick around. And welcome back. Diane in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Diane, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Yes, a few days ago at a town hall meeting, we was asked, like, what all are you doing about all this, the Democrats? And he said, we cannot stop it. We can't. We're doing all we can. So he recommended people take to D.C. en masse, and I'm looking to go next week, next month sometime. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to go and stay as long as I can. Now, do I want him to have a magic wand and do this? All these other politicians, they can't. I do believe him. He's from a working class family. His dad worked in a lumber mill. Mine did too. I think he's being real, and I do appreciate he's being with
Jeff Berkeley is a genuine straight shooter. If he tells you something,
yes,
you can take it to the bank. It's true.
And I believe him. I didn't want to hear it, but I believe him. Yeah. We have to do it. Nobody's going to do it for us, Tom.
Yep.
Nobody.
Yep.
We have to be the leaders that we would like to have. We have to embody that. Yep. And I'm old now, too. Everybody's old that calls in. I'm not. I mean, maybe you have some younger viewers, but really, we need to be there because we need the gray hairs and white hairs to be there.
We are the wise elders. We are the ones who've seen the cycle before. Yeah, I get it, Diane, and good on you for planning to go and participate, and hopefully more people will do that because
peacefully. Yes.
I'm sorry?
Absolutely. Oh, I just said peacefully protest. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. As Lincoln said, public opinion is everything. Diane, thank you. Good luck, and get out there. Rick in Castro Valley, California. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Hey, Tom. There's a clarion call for Kamala to emerge from, the background to. Yeah, but here's the thing. Usually those who lose the elections are standard bearers of the party based on, and if I'm wrong, tell me, but no one's made the call for her. No one's made the push within the party to move her forward. Now, we also have to understand that human nature, she was hurt by this. The Democrats did not do her any favors by pushing her out there. They used these old consultants with these, playbooks from the 80s and 90s. Yep. They're not progressive. And so I just don't know what to, why do we
Right, and she's got that scarlet letter of being the loser, the scarlet L.
Right, and then she's a black woman.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So there's everything going against her. What it is Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer. These are the people who need to move the face of the party forward. But here's the problem. Any accepted face has to be some old, decrepit white dude as opposed to AOC, Jasmine Crawford, and all these young whippersnappers who are coming up with progressive ideas and the histrionics to attack these people. So this is not on Kamala. This is on the party.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to see what happens. I like the fact that Rachel took Jeffrey to task, and he changed his tune immediately after that.
Well, she
So
just
we're
gave
gonna
him.
see.
She just gave him all the rope he wanted. He used he hung himself with it. But yeah, I get your point, Rick. I absolutely get your point. Thank you, and thanks for calling and making it. 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. You know, Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew both took cash bribes while they were in the White House. Since then, you know, the Supreme Court, or at least 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court, made it a lot easier for politicians to take bribes with their Citizens United decision, which basically legalized political bribery as long as it's done through campaigns or PACs or super PACs. But for some people, there's just never enough money, right? Donald Trump has been running small-time hustles to make money for decades, selling sneakers, Bibles, steaks, vodka, water. But now he's hit the big time. He's got these fungible tokens, right? These fungible crypto assets, which are basically just digital pictures of Donald Trump that say, fight, fight, fight. And he has turned them into an $8 billion machine. His wife is in on this too, with his Trump coin. It's a new way that foreign powers and billionaires in the United States can just shovel money into Donald Trump's pocket. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled Presidential Payola, The Evolution of Political Bribery. Check it out.
Funds for green endeavors frozen cold. 300 billion dreams on hold. Wind farms halted, progress stalled. The fossil fires once more enthralled. The war on science has begun. Truth dismissed and facts outrun. The steps we take, the choices made, will shape the future, forge the blade. On the 20th day.
Lou?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can just fine. You're on the air. What's on your mind today, Lou?
Oh, hi, Tom. Thank you for what you do. I just wanted to make a comment. I do not mean to be a pessimist, but taking away government assistance to people in need will probably create a situation which people will become desperate. Desperate people do desperate things, and unfortunately, street crime probably will increase from simple shoplifting to more serious crimes. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm afraid of.
And then that provides Trump with an excuse to go super authoritarian.
Oh God, I don't know, Tom. I just wanted to say thank you for what you do. I myself personally, I'm going to try to get more active in my community, and hopefully we can all overcome this.
Good on you, Lou. Good on you. It's really the only thing left for us is to step up, speak out, join the Democratic Party, and become part of the change that party needs, and try to rescue this country from these neo-fascists who are trying to take it down. Lou, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Mary in Minneapolis. Hey, Mary, thanks for listening to KTNF. What's up?
Well, Tom, I had a rather unusual experience. My phone was completely in my possession. I have a diabetic monitor. It beeped, so I went over to look at it. And right next to my diabetic app is an app, Truth Social. I didn't download it. I didn't do anything. I wasn't in an app store, and there it was.
Really?
And I wouldn't download it if I was on my deathbed.
Is this an Android phone or an iPhone?
No, it's an Apple phone. I called T-Mobile, which happens to be my provider. They're supposedly investing investigating, but it's been going on forever. I called my Attorney General's office, Keith Ellison. I called the FTC. They took a report on it because I want to know if this is just happening to people.
Wow.
Is he able to just download his app onto people's phones?
Shouldn't be able to. And Apple phones have incredible security. I mean, if you've got an Android phone, you're always at risk. But and there's really no way to secure them. But the Apple phones are damn secure devices.
I know, and I went to the Apple store, and they had not seen any. I'm trying to find out if this is happening to anyone else.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so far I haven't heard of it happening to anyone. I did look at Blue Sky. I was going to download Blue Sky, and but I didn't do it because there were so many options, and I didn't want certain ones. And that was a couple days before this appeared. But that's the only thing that would be relative to.
Yeah, I have no answer for you, Mary. I'm sorry, but if you find out what's going on, would you call back and let us know?
I certainly will. I'm a longtime listener back to the days of Al Franken, Ed Schultz, Rachel, your Lunch with Bernie.
That's 15 years ago.
I love all that you do, and keep it up, and we'll try to become more active as we can.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much.
Gray hairs. Yep.
There you go. Appreciate the call. Rob in Birmingham, Alabama. Hey, Rob, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. How are you, man? So my question really, I'm coming from the other side of your typical caller, as we talked about. But what is the issue that Democrats and those on the left have with reducing jobs where people aren't productive? Because
if people aren't productive, then yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, good.
But to the best of my knowledge, nobody is actually measuring people's productivity. They're just cutting, 10% here, 12% there, 3% there. That doesn't seem to make any sense. That's like cutting your leg off to lose weight.
But you understand that in the private sector, which I believe statistically that's the majority of the country versus government employees, you have to be productive on a consistent basis. It's not just a one-time thing.
No, correct? I get that. And I think by and large that's true in the government sector as well, although, nobody's disputing that there are some people just goofing off out there, but that doesn't seem to be the criteria, Rob. And I think that's why everybody's so upset. But it's the best answer I've got for you, Rob. I'm sorry, and I'm out of time. Had I caught that you were Rob, our Republican caller, I would have tried to get you a little more time. Rob, I'm sorry, I'm out of time here.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 27 minutes past the hour.
Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Separated by the Border, a birth mother, a foster mother, and a migrant child's 3,000-mile journey by Gina Thomas. This is from the introduction. How good is your Spanish? And would you English? The social worker had texted me on a Friday afternoon. I sat at my desk, bent over my cell phone, reading and rereading the text. My thoughts traveled to Honduras, bachata, ballades, clothes hanging on the line. So many things in our lives seem to have prepared us for this moment. My son was attending a bilingual school. I'm a former ESL teacher, and my husband Andrew and I speak Spanish. Plus, Honduras already had a piece of my heart. As those thoughts came, I tried to push them away. The voice of logic came in loud and strong. We had just gotten into a routine with Emma, our foster daughter. 2 foster children and 2 biological children would be too much for us to handle. Our first month as foster parents taught us this, and for the sake of everyone involved, we knew it would be very unfair to try that again. A little later, the social worker called and left me a message saying, "It looks like the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the ORR, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, will get her on Monday in court. It'll only be the weekend. Call me back after you talk to Andrew." I asked Andrew when I got home, "We can manage 4 kids for one weekend, right?" He said he doubted it would last only a weekend, but I convinced him that if ORR and ICE were involved, they would get her on Monday. A few minutes later, I called our social worker and said that we'd do it. When I walked into the social worker's office, Julia was sitting there in a brand new bright pink Barbie t-shirt. The social worker said they'd found the t-shirt in their clothing closet and Julia wanted it. Beautiful, soft onyx curls framed the girl's umber face. Her dark complexion made me speculate she was from a coastal region. She stood in dirty flip-flops next to the social worker's chair, chit-chatting away in Spanish without a care in the world. "Julia's been talking my ear off," the social worker said. "She's so sweet, but I have no idea what she's saying." Another worker brought in a black tote bag with a few other items from the clothing closet, including a pair of sequined high-top sneakers that Julia had picked out. I began to speak to Julia, pronounced Julia, in Spanish. She seemed happy to hear her mother tongue, but her body language didn't budge. I read that signal loud and clear, so I kept my distance and sat down on the floor. "¿Cómo se llama?" I asked. "Julia." "¿Cuántos años tienes?" "How old are you?" "Cuatro," 4. She looked older than 4 to me. I had been told her parents were deported and she was left behind. She was under federal jurisdiction. I would find out later this was all misinformation. I signed some papers and said, "We'll see you on Monday." I asked Julia if she would come stay with me and my family for the weekend. She smiled. I told her I had 3 other kids. Her eyes expanded with excitement. On the drive home, she jolted my Spanish from its slumber. The social worker wasn't kidding about how much this little one talked. On April 6, 2018, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced a new zero-tolerance policy in which the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice would partner for the sake of prosecuting illegal entry into the United States. Sessions said, quote, "If you cross this border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you. It's that simple. If you smuggle aliens across our border, then we will prosecute you. If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you, and that child will be separated from you as required by law. If you don't like that, then don't smuggle children over our border." End quote. 6 weeks later, almost 2,000 children had been separated from their parents at the border since the zero-tolerance policy took effect. When Sessions announced the administration's new policy, I couldn't comprehend the cruelty. I also wondered if it explained why a preschooler was living under my roof. Julia had come to live with me and my family in February of 2018, and it felt surreal to be a part of her story. She had first been separated from her mother, Guadalupe, called by her nickname Lupe through the rest of this book, by smugglers who were paid to bring them across the border. Julia had then been separated from her stepfather, Carlos, by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, likely because what was recognized by the Honduran government as stepfather was not recognized by the U.S. government as the same, a detail I didn't understand until an immigration expert read the first draft of this book and explained it. Julia had already suffered much trauma, and separating her from her stepfather had only inflicted more. The weight of the trauma that we, as a nation, began inflicting on vulnerable children and their parents was cruel and unusual punishment. When I heard that my own country was going to begin separating children regularly from their parents as a policy, it broke me. Reality became surreal, and Andrew and I learned to live in it, separating the trauma from our emotions so that we could survive. As the veil of Oz is ever lifting from my white evangelical American eyes, what I now see is simply heartbreaking. Government-secured human rights are mostly for privileged white people. Julia is not white. Julia is undocumented.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
It starts with a spark, a fire in the night, a lie that's told to dim the light. Fear spreads fast and truth takes flight while shadows grow, feeding on fright. presidency, strip away your voice, twist the laws, give you no choice. From fear and hate, they build their stage, unleashing monsters fueled by rage. The playbook's old, but the scars are new. History echoes, we've seen this through. With every word, they cast their spell, a spiral down, a path to hell. This is Trump's monster playbook, written in deceit, turning neighbors into foes on every street. When fear becomes the weapon and truth is overthrown, the monster takes the throne and we're left alone.
Welcome back. 35 and a half minutes past the hour. And what's on your mind today? Picking up your calls here, Rich in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Hey, Rich, what's up?
Hey, Dr. Tom, how you doing?
I am fine, but I am great, but I'll get better, Rich. What's on your mind?
Okay. Well, I'm calling to I guess, disagree with you vehemently. I hear your little discussion or whatever that you run, your clip about term limits, and I totally disagree with that. And my argument would be, do you want 10 more years of Marjorie Taylor Greene? Do you want 10 more years of Tommy Tuberville? Do you want 10 more years of the guy out of Louisiana that says omelets are better than sex? Because that's what you're going to get.
If their constituents elect them, yeah, I do, Rich. I believe 8 states now that have instituted term limits, pretty rigorous term limits within their legislatures. And what we've found in those states is that those term limits have massively increased the power of the people who don't have term limits, who are always there, which is the lobbyists, the permanent lobbying infrastructure. And most of these lobbyists stick around for 20, 30, 40 years. Now, many of them are former legislators, but they stick around for a long, long time. And they end up, when you have term limits, they end up becoming the institutional infrastructure of those bodies. And I'm not a fan of adding more power to the lobbyist class.
Well, yeah, but I think they already have power, and so do the billionaires. You saw when Trump had all the big billionaires up front during, I guess, what was the inauguration. And I just don't think we're going to get out of this mess. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene claimed that there were Jewish space lasers starting the fires in the West.
Rich, well, there's a reason why the Koch brothers were big fans of term limits. There's a reason why the Republicans push for term limits. And that reason is what I just said. It increases the power of individual lobbyists. It also makes it harder for average people to go to Washington, D.C. and get a job. I mean, if you've got a decent job, or even if you don't have a decent job, and you run for Congress and you get a job as a congressperson, if you can do a good job, you can have, a decent salary, $100 and some odd thousand a year. You can have a decent salary for as long as you continue doing a good job. If you know that after 4 years or 6 years you're going to be term limited, you dramatically cut the pool of people who might be willing to consider giving up a private sector job in order to go into public service, which is the second big reason against term limits.
Yes, but the founding fathers thought that's what people would do, public service. They never thought people would be career politicians and walk out of
No, they absolutely did think people would do that. Many of them were. I mean, John Adams' son, John Quincy Adams, started in the U.S. House of Representatives, went on to become president, and then after he left the White House, went back to the U.S. House of Representatives until his old age. No, they absolutely thought that people who were doing good public service should be there as long as they want to be. And, and again, we do have term limits in every elected position. It's called an election.
There's only a limited number of seats that I've been told. Now, I may be wrong. You would know better than me, that are actually even competitive due to gerrymandering.
That's correct, and that's an argument against gerrymandering. It's not an argument for term limits. Term limits just means that, particularly if because of term limits, you're basically knocking out most middle-class people. Then the only people who can actually run for public office are the people who can afford to take a 6-year break or a 4-year break or an 8-year break out of, having a real job, and that's the wealthy people. So with term limits, you end up with a richer and more entitled class of so-called public servants, of politicians, number one. And like I said before, number two, what you do is you massively empower the lobbyists. And I'll just repeat it again. This is why the Heritage Foundation is a big fan of term limits and why every progressive think tank is not. I don't want Bernie Sanders kicked out of the United States Senate. He's been a politician and he's been in public service for most of his life. God bless him. You know, for every AOC, there's a Bernie Sanders out there someplace. It should be up to the voters, not up to, some arbitrary, you only get to serve X years. It just doesn't make sense to me. Rich, I got to move along, but thanks for the call. It's a good debate, good discussion. I appreciate it. Ed in Chicago. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Thanks, Tom. Great point about term limits. I actually use your example when people discuss it with me. Long-time listener, back to IE America Radio Days also.
Oh, thank you.
And no problem. You're great. The reason why I'm calling primarily is to answer Rob from a few calls ago, talking about the people who work in the government and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'd like to probably have a discussion with him and ask him, do you think government should be run like a business? Because most of these guys think that. And I think that's great. I think every Democrat would go, then let's shake hands. If you promise you mean that, shake hands with me on it. And let me take over the government. Because I've been from Fortune 200 companies down to a company that's been sold off in bankruptcy. I will tell you what, pal, Rob, and I shouldn't say pal to him. I mean, that's disrespectful. Rob, here's what would happen. If you took that bet with us, I would immediately shut down North and South Dakota because they're redundant. A corporation does not need two of those. Corporation would then go into states like Mississippi, Alabama, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Kentucky, taker states, as we usually call them, and go, you guys do not make any money. We end up having to cover your costs because your tax base is too small to cover your operating costs. And corporations, they shut those divisions down and sell them off or get rid of them or liquidate them. So if you're willing to lose all your senators, yes, or consolidate, bingo. I don't need Kentucky and Tennessee. They're the same state pretty much, guys. Pretty much the same state. I can get them into one state. That's the point I want to make is I'm trying to be respectful to them and say that's how businesses operate. So when these people have this fantasy of, well, corporations, they're productive. No. Yes, you're right. They're efficient. Their goal is to make money for their investor. And if you're not making money, like I'm at lunch right now, that's the reason I'm calling you, because I'm being productive all day here. But they'll get rid of me if I'm not working for it, because I'm a taker. They look at me as a taker. Actually, I'm in a cost center. If you're not in sales, generating money for your company, you're pretty much a taker.
Yeah.
Anytime you work in billing or support of any nature, or on pricing or pricing analyst, or you're doing the cost analysis on work, you are not technically a productive member of that company. You might help them not lose money, but you're not making money for that company. The sales rep is. So all these guys who think this stuff, like I said, I'd love to have this discussion with them and a lot of them are in business, but they never think this stuff through because they're like, you know what? There's a lot of states, and we have this discussion in Illinois when they say, well, we don't need Chicago. We need to separate from Chicago. Chicago pays somewhere around 30 to 40% of all the state's bills combined. The collar counties around Chicago pay the next 30%. So the rest of the state is only kicking in 30%. That's a lot of soybean and corn subsidies. That's a lot of times tornadoes hit downstate. We pay the bill up here.
Yeah, the red counties are taker counties generally. The blue counties are maker counties.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's nothing against it. I got family all over this state. I got people from small areas. I harbor no ill will towards them because hey, look, we're all part of this together, man.
Yeah.
And we have to figure these solutions out together. That's the point I wanted to make to Rob is be careful what you wish for because people are learning it right now.
Yeah. Well, your points were excellent, Ed, and a great crash course in basic civics 101. Thank you so much. That was I couldn't have said it better. Brilliant.
Thanks,
Ed,
Tom.
Ed, thank you. Rick in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Hey, Rick, thanks for listening on Sirius XM. What's up?
Yeah, when Trump said domestic enemies, is he trying to do an end around a comitatus rule that you can't use the military against the people?
I believe so.
And another thing, too, you see in all the other countries where the military labeled the person who stole an election or just refused, and like I say, our military swore an oath too. What's his name didn't swear an oath. He didn't have a hand in the Bible, but every one of our military people swore an oath to protect us of foreign and domestic enemies.
Right.
Don't let him call us, any of us, domestic enemies. I think him and Elon Musk they kind of fit the bill.
I get it.
I'm just
I get
saying,
it. I'm not
just
sure I
saying.
would call them domestic enemies. I think that's although Trump bowing to Putin is very problematic. But I do think that they are not working in the best interests of this country, and you have to wonder exactly why and where it's going to lead. Rick, thanks so much for the call. I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 45 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Talk media for the sane among us. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back, Ed in Mount Vernon, Washington. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Can you hear me all right?
Just fine, Ed. What's up?
I am calling to comment about Rob and Ed from Ohio gave you the civics lesson that was just beautiful. I want to be the troll and say that if you want to cut unproductive workers in the government, cut the entire Republican Party out.
Yeah, there you go. Well, they are.
Thank you so much, Tom. We love you for years. I got to go.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ed. Good talking to you. Unproductive is the least of the ways that I would describe the GOP. Chris in Littleton, Colorado. Hey, Chris, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hello, Tom. Trump wants to spend billions of our tax dollars to hire Blackwater mercenaries for his own private army.
Yeah, they're talking about that right now. It's wild.
Against U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
That can't be.
Well, they say it's going to be against, quote, illegal
constitutional.
aliens, but, we already know some U.S. citizens have been already caught up in this sweeps.
Also, there's 3 special elections coming up, and people should support the Democrats. If you can't vote in the elections, you can always donate to the candidates.
Yep. One of them is next month, is it March or April, Sean? It's April. Okay, so it's about 6 weeks away, and it's down in Florida, and that's the person Gay Valamont. That's right, Gay Valamont, who was on our program, and but the other 2 I think are in November.
John Weil and Blake Ginnabian, I think, or the other 2.
Yeah, I'm on. John Weil has me on his mailing list now, so I'm getting his stuff all the time.
People can donate to support those. If they win, they can even up the Congress.
I agree, and the right-wing billionaires know this too, so they're already starting to pour money into those districts, in advertising and things. So it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a real uphill battle. Citizens United has corrupted our politics to the point that, it's just very, very difficult for honest politicians to succeed any longer. Chris, thank you. Thanks for your, excellent point that you made, and I appreciate it. Let's see here. Ed in Chicago. Hey, Ed, what's up?
Yeah, Tom, another response to a Republican caller there. Bill Clinton did exactly what Donald Trump says he wants to do. Under Bill Clinton, we had a $230 billion surplus because he went in with a scalpel and cut government waste.
Yeah, Al Gore was in charge of that project.
Right, and Tom, I tell you, this is one of those things where it just grabs people's attention. Yeah. And it should be repeated over and over and over. Under Bill Clinton, we had a $230 billion surplus. We did not have to destroy our government to accomplish that. Don't believe me? Check it out for yourself.
Although Clinton did slightly raise taxes on rich people to pay for that.
Yeah, but again, we had a $230 billion surplus.
There you go.
We did not destroy government to achieve that.
There you go.
I can't say it any more simpler than that.
Yeah, no, and that's brilliant. That's a great talking point. Ed, thank you so much. I appreciate the call. It is 10 and a half minutes before the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a second. Just right on the other side of this music. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out.
In the quiet of an office, a plan was drawn. Words on paper, and soon freedom was gone. A blueprint for power, controlled by the few. A nation's voice silenced, a sinister coup. They took the airwaves, the courts, the rules, turning democracy into a game for fools. The memo that hijacked democracy, a silent coup for the oligarchy. Media bought, the truth suppressed, freedom's heart put to the test. But the fight's not over, it's not too late to turn the tide and reclaim our fate.
Welcome back, 51 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Phil in Park Ridge, Illinois. Hey, Phil, what's up?
Tom, I want to ask you if you think that Trump could be bailing Russia out, that Russia may not be in as a strong a bargaining position as they pretend to be, because their military's been depleted over 3 years, and the sanctions have got to be working. So I'm wondering if Russia could really be on the ropes.
They are.
With all this.
They absolutely are. They're in a huge crisis. They've got massive inflation. They've got large unemployment. Their economy is on a wartime footing, which is unsustainable over the long term. Putin is, he's dealing with hundreds of thousands of casualties. And you're correct. The Russian military has been depleted. I mean, they're having to turn. They don't have enough tanks anymore. I mean, they're having to turn to horses and camels in some cases. They imported North Korean soldiers. They got slaughtered. The Ukrainians have actually taken Russian territory. Russia is in a true crisis right now, and Donald Trump is trying to throw them a lifeline. That's what's going on. And you identified it perfectly, Phil. That's what's going on. That's what this is all about. Putin is asking Trump for help, and Trump is offering it.
Thank you. That's what I suspected all along, Tom.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And it's a shame.
Thank you, Phil.
We could eliminate an enemy forever.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Dan in Lafayette, New York. Hey, Dan, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Fine, thank you. What's up?
I called the other day to ask, maybe you can answer it for me. First, I'd like to make a comment if I could. As a former U.S. Postal Service employee, 37 years, and an APW rep for a number of years, I'm concerned about what Mr. Trump thinks he can do. And I think you probably know that the Postal Board of Governors was created by law, right?
Yeah.
So he wants to dissolve the Postal Board of Governors and put it under the Commerce Department. First of all, do you think that that's something legally he can do? Because my understanding is that it was created by law, and he can't just do that. And if he does, what do you think is going to happen to the Postal Service, employees and retirees like me? I mean, when you callers like Rob talk about efficiency, when I started working at the post office in '87, there was almost 850,000 employees. When I left 2 years ago, it was down to almost 500,000, which just sounds like a lot, but that's over 300,000 positions that were lost. So What do you think is going to happen?
I think that there's a couple of levels of agenda here on the part of the Trump administration and the GOP with regard to the post office. The first is that they want to get rid of the unions. These guys hate unions. Union density, by the way, in the United States has fallen again as a result of the Trump administration. Now the Labor Department is completely hobbled. So if you try to start a union and your employer fires you, you have no place to go. There's no place to turn to right now. They want to make it even worse. The Postal Workers Union is the largest single union in the United States. I believe the teachers union might be competing with them, but they want to go after these people. Your folks, Dan. That's number one. Right. Number two, Donald Trump wants to end mail-in voting. And so if the Postal Service was to start saying, we just can't deliver ballots, or we won't deliver ballots, or we won't guarantee ballots are delivered on time, or something like that, something that Louis DeJoy really started in 2020 when he kneecapped, when he destroyed over 100 multi-million-dollar sorting machines to slow down the mail. Nonetheless, the mail got delivered. And then number three, you've got billionaires and big corporations who own shipping companies, FedEx, UPS, et cetera, and there's actually dozens of them out there. Louis DeJoy owns one of them, who would love to pick up pieces of the post office, whether they regionalized it state by state, break it up that way, or whether they keep it as a national corporation and sell it off to one of the big three, is something that will be decided. But they're looking at the possibility that these big shipping companies can be given, and already are, by the way, giving Republicans massive campaign contributions, which we used to call bribes before the Supreme Court legalized bribery. And so they're figuring, hey, if we can, this is hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue every year. And the Postal Service has been setting aside $5 billion a year for a couple of decades. There's this huge wad of money that's sitting in this trust fund, or in this escrow account, or whatever it is. It's been just sitting there earning interest. Meanwhile, Trump goes out and lies right through his teeth saying, the post office is losing money. They're just about broke. No, they're not. There's a huge pile of money.
Can I make one more?
Dan, I'm sorry, I'm out of time. If you can, I'll give you 10 seconds.
Thank you. Okay, I worked directly on those machines that you're talking about. I was an ET at the end of my career, and what they made us do during that voting year in 2016 was anything but efficient. Thank you.
I got it. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for being with us. Get out there, get active, tag You're It. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you, and stay safe. We'll catch up with you on the other side.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.